Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Inman family. William Inman and Sandra's story began in 1983 when they met at church. He was 18 and she was 16. With their parents' approval, they quickly got married and moved to Logan, Ohio. William was a devoted religious man who worked as a builder. In his free time, he volunteered at the Evangelical Church of the Tabernacle of Faith near Nelson Villa, where he played musical instruments. Meanwhile, Sandra, as a housewife, supported her husband's spiritual activities. In 1984, the couple had their first child, a son named William Jr. To prevent any confusion, the church community referred to the father as Bill and the son as Will. Over the years, Will grew up. In 2001, at the age of 17, he met 15-year-old Summer Cook at a church service. Their meeting was strikingly similar to the love story of Bill and Sandra. The young couple dated for 3 years, and in 2004, after Summer turned 18, they got married. They quickly settled into Will's parents' large house in Logan. In the same year, 39-year-old Bill Inman declared himself a spiritual leader and turned his garage into a temporary church, where he started holding services. Although local residents were initially skeptical of him as a self-proclaimed pastor, his church began to gather followers. It started with neighbors and gradually expanded to their acquaintances. People were drawn there to pray, seek comfort, and make donations. In 2005, Will and Summer joyfully welcomed a son named Alex. However, they soon encountered financial challenges. Will's work at the church did not provide enough income, so the family chose to seek better opportunities in another state. In 2006, the Inman family relocated to Florida. They soon found jobs in the construction industry, building hotels in their new location. Meanwhile, Sandra and Summer looked after their home and raised little Alex. After 2 years, however, they missed their hometown and decided to return to Ohio. Unfortunately, they had lost the right to repurchase their previous house in Logan while they were away, so they had to rent a different place in rural Vinton. In 2008, shortly after returning, Will and Summer welcomed their second child, a daughter named Kale. 2 years later, they had their third child, another daughter named Alana. Despite the difficulties of raising young children, Will and Summer made an effort to carve out time for themselves. Almost every weekend, they entrusted their kids to Bill and Sandra, who happily embraced their roles as grandparents. For this elderly couple, their grandchildren brought immense joy and purpose to their lives. In the spring of 2010, Bill Inman was officially appointed as a pastor of the Church of the Tabernacle of Faith. Alongside his wife, he established a charitable organization named Ranch of Mercy, which was created to assist those in need, particularly people who had lost their jobs or homes. Bill had a vision of constructing a large shelter for orphans and widows, intending to build it himself. Unfortunately, he faced challenges due to insufficient funding to make this dream a reality. Bill proposed holding a lottery to raise funds. He planned to sell tickets for $10 each to reach his financial goal. The winner will receive either a new house or $200,000. Bill also promised to give away 99 other valuable prizes in a raffle. Information about the lottery was shared through local media and advertising. Bill went door to door, encouraging people to support the cause by buying tickets, assuring them that the money raised would be used to build a shelter for those in need. In total, Inman sold 100,000 tickets and raised $1 million. The prize draw is set for September 2010. While Bill was busy with charity work, issues were developing in the Inman family. In June 2010, Summer informed her husband that she wanted a divorce after 6 years of marriage. Before this conversation, she had written a painful entry in her diary, expressing that she was very tired of trying to please everyone and felt exhausted. She questioned whether she deserved happiness and if she had the right to fall in love again and feel loved in return. She acknowledged that it might not be the best time, but she felt the need to tell Will the truth, believing he deserved to know that she did not want to be with him anymore. She mentioned that she needed time alone to figure out who she really was, as she felt like she was just following orders at that moment. Summer emphasized her love for her children, stating that she wouldn't trade them for the world, but she did not want them to see their mother merely obeying someone else. She expressed uncertainty about how Will would react, fearing that he might get angry, try to take the kids, or even threaten her. She believed they should share equal time with the children, but she knew his parents would oppose this and try to persuade her to stay, although she realized that wouldn't change anything. She also recounted that yesterday, Will had asked her what she wanted, but she couldn't answer because all she knew was what she didn't want, to be unhappy and feel trapped. Yet, she remained silent every day, saying that all she could do was cry and sleep. She admitted that she just didn't know how to escape the situation and make everything right, hoping that when she wrote again, she would have found the answer. Summer filed for divorce and moved out of the Inmans' house with the children and essential belongings to her parents' home. She wanted to ensure that Alex, Kale, and Alana could still communicate with their father, so she allowed them to visit Will and his parents. 2 months after leaving her husband, Summer began a relationship with Adam Peters. At the same time, she took a job as a cleaner at a bank in downtown Logan, as she had no formal education and struggled to find other employment. Meanwhile, September and October passed, but the drawing that Bill from Ranch of Mercy had promised never took place. It also became clear that construction on the Prize house hadn't even started, and the Bill family was slow to refund people's money for the tickets. In early December 2010, the Inmans received notice that they needed to leave their rented home due to unpaid debts. After this news, Summer, accompanied by Adam, went to collect their belongings. However, Will and his parents refused to let her in. Summer called the police, claiming that Will was threatening her and wouldn't return her personal items. When officers arrived, Will continued to deny entry. He threatened to shoot Adam, and even got into a confrontation with a police officer. In her statement, Summer explained that before their wedding, she and Will appeared to have a perfect relationship, but everything changed after they married. Will became controlling and jealous, making unfounded accusations. He dictated her actions and invaded her privacy, affecting her eating habits, household responsibilities, and even their sexual relationship. Summer was so restricted that she couldn't sleep without his permission. He essentially kept her confined to the house and took away her phone and keys. She revealed that Will had always wanted to have 12 children with her and had even considered marrying a second wife. He frequently visited websites for polygamous families, where he shared explicit photos. Will also threatened to kill Summer if she tried to leave him. At one point, he took her cherished cats, drove them far away, and then lied, saying they had escaped through an open window, laughing and claiming she would never see them again. After Summer accused him of wrongdoing, Will attempted to defend his actions by saying he took her phone and keys because he thought she was being unfaithful. Regarding the cats, he claimed he took them to a shelter because they were scratching the furniture and being aggressive to family members. Eventually, Will was ordered to stay away from Summer, and he received a fine and probation for his actions. A custody battle began between the two families. The Inmans reported to the police that Adam Peters posed a danger to Alex, Kaylee, and Alana. A frightening incident occurred late on the night of March 22, 2011. 25-year-old Summer was finishing her shift at the bank. As usual, she cleaned up her workspace and went outside around 11 p.m. to take out the trash. Before leaving, Summer had sent a message to Adam, whom she was supposed to meet after work, but he never saw her again. Concerned, Adam went to the bank after midnight. He couldn't find Summer, but near the trash can he discovered her belongings, her phone, keys, and a running music player with headphones on. A little further away, he found her jacket in the bushes. Adam called the police and notified Summer's parents about her disappearance. Initially, the family thought that she might have been late from work or misplaced her belongings. However, the bank security service informed them that she hadn't been seen since her shift ended. When the police arrived, several witnesses were already present. 2 women jogging nearby reported that they had seen Summer being kidnapped about an hour earlier. They explained that as Summer approached a dumpster, a Ford Crown Victoria, driven by a blonde woman, pulled up. 2 men wearing black balaclavas exited the vehicle, grabbed Summer, and forced her into the back seat. Despite her attempts to resist, scream, and plead for help, one of the witnesses who tried to intervene was met with pepper spray from the female driver. The kidnappers then drove away with Summer. The 2 women rushed to the nearest police station to report the incident, but for some reason, law enforcement was skeptical and even suspicious of their account, suspecting they might have fabricated the story for amusement. A whole hour had passed after Summer's parents called the police before they finally arrived at the crime scene. Unfortunately, by that time, it was too late for them to find Summer while the trail was still fresh. News of the abduction of 25-year-old Summer Inman quickly spread through local media. Hundreds of residents of Logan joined the search effort, but as days went by, hope of finding her alive began to fade. Summer's parents struggled to keep their thoughts away from the worst possible outcome. A few weeks prior to the tragedy, Summer had posted a picture on Facebook with Adam and the children, depicting what appeared to be a happy family. This photo infuriated Will Inman, Summer's husband. It had been revealed that Summer met Adam before deciding to divorce Will. In the spring of 2010, Adam started working for the Inmans, maintaining their house and yard, and he soon developed feelings for Summer. Initially, she rejected his advances, but eventually, she gave in. In her diary, she reflected on that moment, expressing that when their eyes met, she realized she had let the devil take hold of her and ignored the warnings from God. She mentioned that she tried to walk away, with her mind screaming to run, but she stayed and allowed Adam to embrace her, expressing her regret and guilt. Meeting Adam marked the beginning of the end for Summer and Will's marriage, as she realized that she wanted to pursue happiness, love, and to be loved, which ultimately led her to file for divorce. 5 days before Summer disappeared, Will attempted to challenge the alimony payments in court. He wanted to reduce the amount he had to pay his ex-wife from $150 per child each month to $50, as his annual income was only $6,500. Will, along with his parents, sought sole custody of the children, but the judge denied their request. Bill and Sandra deeply missed their grandchildren, who were the center of their lives. Since separating from Summer, the elderly couple had visibly lost weight and appeared weary. In March 2011, shortly after Summer went missing, the police found the Inman family, Bill, Sandra, and Will, were hiding in Bill's mother's house in Jackson County, Ohio. During questioning, all 3 of them consistently denied any involvement in Summer's disappearance. They explained that on the night she vanished, they had traveled to Cleveland to look at a new house. However, their car broke down, and they spent the entire night trying to fix it on the side of the road. They returned home to Logan the following morning. The Inmans stated that they had always treated Summer well and rarely had conflicts with her. However, they noted that after Adam Peters came into their lives, things took a turn for the worse. Bill, Sandra, and Will described Adam as a negative influence who had ruined their previously happy family. The police took an interest in a white Ford Crown Victoria that was parked near the Inman's house. They seized the car's GPS navigator and examined its route. They discovered that on the afternoon of March 22, when the kidnapping took place, the car was in Logan. The GPS was turned off at 5:30 p.m. that evening and only activated again the following morning, March 23, still in Logan. There was no evidence that the Inman family ever came to Cleveland. Additionally, Phone records indicated that the suspects remained in Logan throughout the night from March 22 to March 23. On the morning of March 23 at 7:30 a.m., Bill, Sandra, and Will were seen at a car wash, where they had the car thoroughly cleaned inside. Summer was not with them. Afterward, the Inmans traveled to Cleveland, where they changed the tires at an auto repair shop. The mechanic found it unusual that Bill chose to replace nearly new tires with older ones. Additionally, the Inmans attempted to alter the car's appearance, and Bill removed a spotlight that he had previously installed near the side mirror. After the arrest, Bill attempted to reassure his elderly mother that they were innocent and that the trials they faced were a form of divine punishment. However, after several hours of intense questioning and realizing that all three could face the death penalty, Sandra eventually broke down. She confessed that they were responsible for the kidnapping of Summer on that tragic night. The men wearing balaclavas were identified as her husband, Bill, and her son, Will. Sandra explained that the abduction was entirely her idea. She intended to scare her daughter-in-law into allowing Will to see their children, but things quickly spiraled out of control. She stated that Will would admit to guilt for both murder and kidnapping. Sandra acknowledged that it was her idea to take Summer, explaining that she believed this would frighten her. Will tied Summer's hands, feet, and neck with plastic ties. Summer struggled and screamed, but then suddenly lost consciousness. Upon noticing that she was unresponsive, Will panicked and wanted to cut her free. He called out to his mother, asking where the knife was because he couldn't find it. As the family desperately searched for the knife, precious minutes passed. It was too late, and Summer had suffocated. Sandra insisted that they never intended to harm their daughter-in-law. Their goal was simply to scare her in order to resolve a custody dispute over the grandchildren so they could see them on weekends. On March 29, 2011, 1 week after the abduction, Sandra revealed the location where they had hidden the body. Summer was placed in an abandoned well on the property of the church that the Inman family attended, known as the Church of the Tabernacle of Faith, which is situated near Nelsonville, 30 kilometers from the bank where Summer worked. Bill Inman had previously helped build this church, and 28 years ago, he and Sandra got married there under its arches. When the police removed the concrete lid from the well, they discovered a disturbing scene. Summer was at the bottom, her body positioned head first. She was dressed in the same outfit she had worn on her last day, a black t-shirt that read, "I don't have an anger problem, I have an idiot problem." The autopsy revealed that Summer had died from strangulation. Besides the marks left by plastic ties on her neck, wrists, and ankles, there were no other injuries on her body. Sandra originally intended to dispose of the body in the river. However, she later thought the church well would be a safer place where it wouldn't be discovered. She confessed to her crime and showed genuine remorse for her actions. The trial soon followed. Bill, 49, and Will, 28, both pleaded not guilty to Summer's murder. Throughout the hearings, they spoke very little and avoided making eye contact with her parents. In contrast, Sandra took full responsibility for the crime, reiterating that the abduction was her idea. As she delivered her final statement, the woman tearfully pleaded for forgiveness from Summer's parents. Overwhelmed with emotion, Sandra clearly expressed her deep regret for the tragic events. "Summer was like a daughter to me," she cried. "If I could turn back time, I would never have made this terrible choice." In 2012, the court sentenced Bill and Will Inman to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sandra received a life sentence but is eligible for parole after 15 years. The church friends and parishioners all agreed that Bill was the one controlling everything in the Inman family. He made all the decisions. No one thought that the idea of the kidnapping came from Sandra. It was well known that Will had been spoiled as a child, with his parents giving in to his every demand. Sandra realized that both her husband and son were as guilty as she was, but she continued to plead guilty, hoping that it would lessen the consequences for them. Alex, Kale, and Alana were cared for by the parents of Summer, who had passed away for an extended period. They struggled to explain to their grandchildren the absence of their mother, father, grandmother, and grandfather. The tragic story of the Inman family highlights how concealed anger, jealousy, and a need to control others can result in devastating outcomes. Bill and Sandra, who appeared to embody piety and strong family values to everyone, revealed themselves to be oppressive figures to their daughter-in-law. Summer found herself trapped in a toxic relationship that stifled her will and desires. Her efforts to escape ultimately cost her life. Will, who was raised in this oppressive environment, became selfish and resistant to compromise. His obsession with reclaiming his wife and children at any price ultimately led to his downfall. The terrible crime committed by the Inman's family shattered multiple families, leaving 3 young children without their mother and a grandfather and grandmother without their beloved family member. This story highlights the importance of letting go of grudges, respecting others' boundaries, and building relationships based on trust and respect. Holding on to anger can eventually lead to outbursts that damage the most valuable aspects of our lives. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Zoe Sarnacki. Zoe Sarnacki was born on March 25, 1991, in Portland, Maine, a city in the northwest of the United States. She was raised in a loving family consisting of her parents, John and Linda Sarnacki, her brother Gregory, and 2 half-sisters, with whom she still maintains a close relationship. Zoe's father, John, worked as a construction worker and provided well for the family. As a result, Zoe was exposed to a variety of creative activities from a young age, which led to her strong interest in art. Her family also loved animals and had 5 cats at home. As Zoe grew older, she became increasingly curious and developed a strong desire to travel and experience different cultures. She also adopted a vegan lifestyle, choosing to consume only plant-based foods and avoiding animal products. Zoe was raised in an ecologically conscious culture that prioritized animal welfare, environmental conservation, and healthy living. This culture played a major role in shaping her personality. By the time she started high school in 2005, Zoe had already built up a large group of friends who considered her to be cheerful, enthusiastic, and friendly. However, things changed in 2008 when Zoe made a shocking decision on her 17th birthday. She decided to drop out of school. Her friends and family were surprised by the decision, and her parents were particularly unhappy with her choice. Despite this sudden change, Zoe's former classmates remember her fondly, describing her as a kind and loving person. A few months after leaving school, Zoe found a job at a local bakery and cafe called Bagel Works, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life. On March 25, 2009, Zoe's 18th birthday, she was looking forward to getting a tattoo on one of her arms. Inspired by the works of Austrian artist Gustav Klimt, she had a clear idea of the design she wanted. Zoe went to a tattoo parlor in the Old Port area. There, she met 27-year-old tattoo artist Chad Gurney. They quickly formed a bond, and after just a few days of meeting, Zoe agreed to start a romantic relationship with him. Notably, their 9-year age gap did not stop her from pursuing a relationship with Chad. Chad had a unique background. Born and raised in Maine, he attended Wells High School, where he was known as the goalie for lacrosse, a competitive sport played between 2 teams using a small rubber ball and a long-handled stick. After graduating from high school, Chad moved to Lynchburg, Virginia, to attend Liberty University, an institution known for its ties to the famous evangelical pastor Jerry Falwell. Chad has many tattoos on his body, most of which depict aliens. One design stands out, a gray alligator tattoo. In the context of tattoos, alien designs can mean 2 things. One is that the person believes in the existence of beings from other planets, and 2 is that it reflects the personality of the person wearing the tattoo, who is trying to say that they do not fit into this world, that they are different from others and that they are unique. As for the reptile tattoo, it is said to symbolize danger and hostility, a predator to be avoided. Before moving to Portland in 2005, Chad had a difficult time recovering from a near-fatal car accident in Alabama that had occurred 4 years earlier. On a trip to a lacrosse game, a local van carrying players and coaches was hit from behind by a car and pushed into the oncoming lane, where it collided with a large truck. The impact threw Chad from the van and he nearly lost his leg. He has undergone approximately 20 surgeries due to severe head injuries. Chad underwent a psychiatric evaluation following his accident, which revealed that he had cognitive impairments. These impairments affected his speech, memory, and mathematical reasoning. After the accident, Chad received a large settlement from a lawsuit, allowing him to become financially independent. Years later, in 2007, Chad sought treatment for anxiety and depression. He was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and organic personality disorder. In 2009, Chad traveled to Hawaii alone, where he met Zoe. Chad and Zoe began dating and decided to have an open relationship, which meant they were free to see other people. After starting their relationship, Chad continued to travel. In May 2009, he took a weekend trip to Vancouver, a city in Canada. When Chad returned to Portland, Zoe confessed to him remorsefully that while he was away, she had had an affair with another man and had sex with him. At first, Chad did not seem to mind the affair, as they had previously agreed to maintain an open relationship. However, after this confession, Chad changed and began to insist that Zoe quit her job and go with him to Thailand. Zoe refused him, not knowing the devastating consequences that would follow. On May 25, 2009, Zoe came to Chad's apartment and took a nap because she was tired. While she was sleeping, Chad violently attacked her. He grabbed her by the neck, hit her in the head, and strangled her until she died. After Zoe died, Chad continued to commit crimes, including having sex with her body and then decapitating her. After committing the crime, Chad showered, dressed and drove to a nearby gas station to fill up the tank, showing a disturbing calmness after committing such a heinous act. Chad returned to his apartment, where he poured petrol over Zoe, creating a trail of fuel leading to the front door. He then set it on fire. Before the fire spread throughout the apartment, Chad quickly grabbed a backpack filled with items for his trip to Thailand, a laptop and a handgun. After the apartment was completely engulfed, Chad went to an ATM to withdraw cash and then checked into the Old Orchard Beach Motel, where he relaxed in the hot tub. A 911 call was made and emergency services were alerted to the fire at Chad's apartment. Police arrived quickly on the scene and extinguished the fire. Upon entering the building, they discovered a horrific scene. Inside the charred ruins of the apartment was a badly burned body surrounded by crosses and other religious objects. A neighbor called Chad to report that his house was on fire. Chad replied that he was out of town, headed to his hometown of Lewiston, and quickly ended the call. 2 days later, on May 26, Chad spoke to his best friend and confessed to killing Zoe, calmly explaining the events that led up to it. He appeared rational, claiming that he was exhausted from the pain and had lost control of himself. While driving through the streets of Portland, Chad carelessly ran a red light and was pulled over by a city police officer. During the stop, Chad claimed that a previous accident in 2005 had left him with mental health issues, and he asked his friend to explain this to the police over the phone. After a conversation with his friend and the police, Chad voluntarily went to the police station and confessed to Zoe's murder. The police then seized his belongings. A forensic examination of Chad's computer discovered a video of the gruesome scene on his hard drive, titled "Woman Half Decapitated Over Suspicion of Adultery." At least if she cheated, she wouldn't do it again. This incriminating evidence was later presented to the court. On Wednesday, May 27, Zoe's high school held a moment of silence during class to honor her. Before lunch, teachers and students were informed of the tragic incident. Later that day, Christine Koo, Zoe's half-sister, issued a statement to local media on behalf of the family. She stressed that this was no ordinary murder, as the perpetrator, Chad, had committed many heinous acts. Christine reported that the police had informed her of the shocking events surrounding Zoe's murder. According to them, Chad had brutally attacked Zoe in a fit of rage, sexually assaulted her, and then set her body on fire. He then calmly went to a motel and got into a hot tub. A week after Zoe's tragic death, on June 2, 2009, a vigil was held in front of Chad's former apartment building. The vigil served as a moment of comfort for Zoe's loved ones and friends. Many strangers, shocked and outraged by the brutal crime, attended. It is estimated that more than 150 people attended the vigil and memorial service for Zoe. Candles and flowers were placed on the steps of the building where her life was tragically ended in memory of Zoe. Zoe's father, John, and her half-sister, Courtney, attended the vigil and were deeply moved by the outpouring of support from so many people. During the investigation, police interviewed Chad's friends and acquaintances, who said he was on a spiritual quest and had plans to travel to Thailand to study Eastern religions. His apartment was said to be decorated with many spiritual artifacts and symbols. Chad's personality seemed to be a mixture of contradictions. On the one hand, he was known to be kind and charming, often giving small gifts to those around him. He also expressed a desire to use the money he received from an accident to help humanity. However, Chad also had a harder side, with tattoos on his arms and a reputation for provocative and confrontational behavior. Those who knew Chad noted that his behavior often pushed people away. Robert Collins, a 24-year-old chef who knew Chad, recalled that people would often ignore him and turn away when Chad came to parties. Chad also confided to Robert that the only thing he truly sympathized with was pain, which was further emphasized by the word pain tattooed on his knuckles. Police and prosecutors have made great efforts to gather every piece of information about this brutal crime. Steve Weir, who rented an apartment from Chad in 2006, was also questioned. He mentioned religious paintings and artifacts in Chad's apartment and said Chad told him he was interested in theology but did not practice it. Watson Atkinson, a tattoo parlor owner in Portland, recalled a conversation with Chad in which Chad shared his plans to use his accident compensation to find direction in his life. However, Watson's impression of Chad was disturbing because Chad seemed to focus on teenage girls, which worried him so much that he forbade his 16-year-old daughter from communicating with Chad, and also repeatedly warned Zoe to stay away from him. An investigation into Chad's background revealed his medical history and mental health diagnoses, but subsequent evaluations by multiple psychologists during his incarceration found no evidence of delusions or hallucinations. In conversations with professionals, Chad expressed strong emotions related to his perception of Zoe's infidelity, which he claimed had frustrated him. According to court documents, he claimed that he was fed up with all his girlfriend's infidelity. He began thinking about killing Zoe when she confessed her infidelity to him. As the trial began, a 127-minute tape of the police interview was played. The tape was recorded 12 hours after the crime and featured Chad speaking to Danham police. In the recording, Chad described his relationship with Zoe as extremely close, with Zoe sometimes staying at his apartment for up to a week. He denied any history of fighting between them and believed they were destined for each other. Chad also admitted to taking Zoe's life, describing her as the most beautiful girl he had ever met and feeling he had a responsibility to tell the truth about what had happened. During his conversation with the police, Chad remained calm and apologized frequently, breaking down in tears several times. He recounted the events of May 25, 2009, saying that Zoe was napping. Chad said that he approached her and began to strangle her, causing Zoe to defend herself and scream for him to stop. According to Chad, when Zoe resisted, he hit her in the head and continued to strangle her until she lost consciousness and stopped breathing. He then detailed the next terrifying actions he performed on her body. Chad revised his testimony, saying that he used 3 knives instead of a samurai sword. He described how he placed a cross between his legs and recounted his actions while Zoe's body burned in the apartment. Chad called himself a terrible person. When questioned about the beheading, Chad claimed that he was trying to turn Zoe's death into a ritual of forgiveness. Chad said he felt haunted on the day of the murder and that everything in his life seemed to have gone dark. He described himself as a primitive person, acting on instinct for hours, which led him to commit the heinous act. The recording of the interrogation, which became key evidence in Cumberland County Superior Court, was heard in its entirety by Judge Roland Cole during the first trial. It was revealed that Chad faced serious consequences, at least 25 years in prison, or possibly life in prison. However, if his mental disorder was recognized, he could be sent to a psychiatric facility in Austin. During the 2011 trial, it was determined that Chad had strangled the victim in a fit of rage. The question remains whether Chad would agree to this testimony, since he had waived his right to a jury trial. Prosecutors argued that Chad, a former Liberty University student and lacrosse champion, was fully aware of his actions. To support this claim, they presented testimony from a psychiatrist and a psychologist, both of whom agreed that Chad understood the gravity of his actions and decided to violently kill his girlfriend. Chad's defense team continued to emphasize his mental health struggles, arguing that he was out of control. On January 11, 2012, Chad's attorneys filed a motion with the Supreme Court to exclude from the case evidence found on Chad's personal computer at the time of his arrest. This evidence included a gruesome video in which he demonstrated how to decapitate an unfaithful woman. The defense argued that the video was inadmissible as evidence. Ultimately, nearly 3 years after the crime, Chad Gurney, then 30, was sentenced to 50 years in prison for the murder of Zoe Sarnacki and an additional 25 years for arson. The judge ruled that the sentences would run consecutively. Chad's lawyers challenged the sentence, but their appeal was rejected. Zoe's family members were disappointed that Chad did not receive a life sentence. During sentencing, the presiding judge said that Chad had a distorted view of the world, but the court's main concern was whether the defendant knew that his actions were wrong. Chad's lawyer, Sarah Churchill, presented her case to the Supreme Court, claiming that Chad's concussion and other injuries from the 2005 accident had left her client in a state of confusion and delusion. She argued that the judge erred in finding Chad guilty, particularly that the search warrant should not have included his smartphone, laptop, and social media pages. Sarah Churchill argued that the court should have focused more on evidence of Chad's psychosis and unstable mental state at the time of the crime, rather than evidence found on his digital devices. The Deputy Attorney General told the court that Chad was accused of killing Zoe as an act of revenge for having an affair with another man. The Deputy Attorney General explained that a video appeared to show Chad sexually assaulting Zoe as punishment for an infidelity that he considered a betrayal. The Deputy Attorney General clarified that the prosecution did not use any information from social media to build its case against Chad. He argued that the evidence convincingly demonstrated that the defendant was fully aware of his actions at the time of the crime. After the verdict was announced, Kathy Kozev, Zoe's aunt, shared with reporters that throughout the trial she felt extremely distressed as she witnessed Chad's sight and voice, taking her back to the traumatic final moments of her niece's life. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kristen Rossum. Ralph and Constance Rossum were dedicated parents to their 3 children, prioritizing their kids' development and well-being above all else. Their children were educated from a young age, attended good schools, and they encouraging their children to explore their interests through a variety of extracurricular activities. However, Their daughter Kristen struggled to cope with the pressure of living up to family expectations. Feeling overwhelmed and desperate to escape, Kristen began to rebel by lying, skipping school and finding ways to escape her temporary problems. At first, she felt more comfortable when she drank alcohol, but over time, the effects of alcohol stopped being effective for her. As a result, she turned to the controlled substance methamphetamine and eventually became dependent on it. Methamphetamine, commonly referred to as meth, is widely considered the most addictive illicit substance in the United States. Its use often leading to paranoia, impaired judgment, and euphoria. Kristen's parents noticed her erratic behavior and in a conversation, discovered she'd been struggling with the substance since high school. Her entire family, who were highly educated, were shocked and deeply affected by this behavior. After months of conflict with her parents, 17-year-old Kristen secretly ran away. While vacationing in Mexico with friends, she met a tall, handsome man named Gregory DeVillers, who was 7 years her senior. Over time, they fell in love with each other. He helped her get settled and get her health back. With Gregory's support, she turned her life around by getting a job at the local forensic service as a toxicology assistant. Her skills impressed the employer and her addiction was forgotten. As a forensic assistant, Kristen graduated from college with honors. Her teachers and employers praised her and gave her the Best Student Award without knowing the reason why she loved her chosen profession. After 5 years of dating Gregory, they had their grand wedding on June 5, 1999. Kristen's parents loved Gregory dearly and were relieved that their daughter had overcome the pain of her past and was now on the path toward a bright and fulfilling future. In March 2000, Kristen was hired by the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office as a toxicologist, specializing in analyzing body fluids for narcotics. Gregory was working in the biotechnology industry at the time. But Kristen soon grew tired of her dull and monotonous life, and she began to look for excitement elsewhere. She met a new co-worker, Michael Robertson, who had just been appointed as the department head. Although Michael was married, they unexpectedly developed strong feelings for each other. They couldn't keep their relationship a secret for long. Gregory discovered many love letters between his wife and Michael. The marriage relationship was getting worse, yet Gregory remained hopeful that it could be salvaged. Understanding his wife's weakness, he made an effort to support and rescue her from her difficulties, hoping to mend their relationship. This time Kristen did not want to be saved. She asked for a divorce on Monday morning, November 6, 2000. Kristen was getting ready for work as usual. Gregory was sick and at home. Kristen was very tired worrying about her husband. In the days after their breakup talk, he was indifferent and unusually calm. Kristen informed Gregory's workplace that he was sick, and then she also visited her husband during her lunch break. Gregory fell asleep at 9:22 p.m. That same day, Kristen called the emergency services to report that her husband Gregory was not breathing. He had most likely committed suicide as he was home alone. Kristen was crying on the phone and she lost her temper, so she did not listen to the dispatcher's instructions about performing an autopsy and performing first aid on her husband. Police and paramedics arrived at the scene at 10:19 p.m. Gregory was pronounced dead. He was lying on the bedroom floor with his torso exposed, surrounded by scattered rose petals. An examination of the room revealed evidence suggesting that Gregory taking a fatal amount of multiple prescription medications. Empty painkiller bottles were scattered around the room, and torn wedding photos were found on his bed. When questioned, Kristen said she told Gregory she wanted to separate the night before, just over a year after their wedding. She felt regret about the marriage, thinking they rushed into it too quickly. Kristen also found Gregory too controlling and she wanted more space. Gregory's death was initially ruled a suicide, caused by a powerful sedative. Kristen signed the cremation papers, but Gregory's family and friends were skeptical. They had noticed no changes in his personality or mood, and they believed he would never use those fatal drugs. The family's doubts led them to try to stop the cremation and request an autopsy. Their persistence eventually led investigators to consider the possibility that Gregory's death was not a suicide, but a murder. An investigation into Gregory's death revealed the fentanyl, a painkiller 150 times more potent than morphine, along with smaller amounts of other substances including clonazepam and trace. Initially, the cause of death was suspected to be an overdose of oxycodone, often referred to as heroin, but further investigation pointed to fentanyl as the lethal dose. A substance can provide pain relief and produce a feeling of euphoria. However, it can also slow down breathing and be fatal if not treated in time. Because of the strong effects of clonazepam and other substances found in Gregory's body, investigators speculate that someone else intentionally gave him a fatal dose of fentanyl. Kristen became the prime suspect due to her extensive knowledge and access to powerful prescription medications like fentanyl. During questioning, Kristen's disheveled appearance and history of substance abuse raised suspicions about her potential involvement in Gregory's death. Her own testimony revealed inconsistencies on the day her husband died. Initially, Kristen told medical staff that he was not taking any medications, but later changed her statement to suggest that he may have taken oxycodone at the hospital. The change in her story, combined with her knowledge and access to powerful prescription drugs, supported the argument that Kristen was involved in her husband's death. On November 8, the police received a call from Russ Lowe, a coworker of Kristen's. Russ revealed that Kristen was having an affair with her boss. Further investigation uncovered evidence of Kristen's relationship with her boss, Michael. This evidence consisted of affectionate emails and computer documents. Notably, the documents also revealed Michael's knowledge of phenyl, a substance that later became significant in the murder case. Kristen and Michael's relationship became a key aspect of the investigation. It is suspected that Gregory became a threat to Michael and Kristen because he knew that Kristen had access to the laboratory and that she had secretly used narcotics. Michael covered for Kristen, supporting her actions. During the investigation, Michael admitted to being aware of Kristen's drug addiction at the time. Although no charges were filed against Michael and Kristen, but they were both fired for violating several rules. Kristen's troubles started in January when police searched her home for evidence of drug use. Initially, she was arrested but later released on bail. A new proof shed light on the investigation, Kristen's diary, uncovered during the initial examination. Kristen didn't write the diary for personal reflection, but rather as a way to present herself to others and maintain her innocence, while making her husband Gregory's death look like a perfect suicide. Notably, on the day of his death, Kristen bought a rose to pair with lingerie that suggested infidelity. A medical examination of Gregory's body revealed that he had been unconscious for at least 6 hours before his death. The estimated time of death was likely about an hour to an hour and a half before it was officially confirmed. Furthermore, bruises were found around the needle marks on his arm. During the investigation, a short supply of the lethal substance was discovered at Kristen's workplace, along with other narcotic substances. A suspicious vial of phenyl was also found, leading police to suspect that Kristen had poisoned Gregory without his knowledge. Kristen was arrested on June 25, 2001, and charged with first-degree murder. After spending 6 months in custody, she was released on bail. The prosecution's main argument in her first trial centered around the motive for the murder. They claimed that Kristen killed Gregory to protect her reputation because he threatened to expose her drug addiction and her affair with Michael. The prosecution alleged that Kristen used a powerful synthetic opioid called fentanyl to poison Gregory. Fentanyl is 80 times more potent than morphine. It was suggested that Kristen initially attempted to kill Gregory with a different substance, clonazepam, but when this failed, she used fentanyl. To make it seem like Gregory had taken his own life, Kristen staged the scene by ripping out pages from her diary and placing personal items, including rose petals and a wedding photograph, around his body. As a biochemistry graduate, Kristen leveraged her knowledge of chemistry and drugs to orchestrate Gregory's death. The prosecution also claimed that Kristen deliberately withheld information about the fentanyl from her colleagues in the medical examiner's office, aiming to mislead them into believing Gregory's death was self-inflicted before his autopsy. The developments of what happened that day are reproduced as follows. On the morning of November 6th, she contacted Gregory's workplace to report his absence, then headed to her workplace. Her colleagues stated that around 9 a.m., she began her workday. However, they recalled finding her crying in their Michael's office about an hour later. The manager of the apartment building where Kristen and Gregory were staying witnessed Kristen returning home at 12:10 p.m. Shortly after, at 12:41 p.m., Kristen went to a nearby grocery store and bought various items. Among these purchases was a credit card statement. This confirmed her emergence at the store several hours before Gregory's death. Additionally, Kristen made multiple phone calls to Michael. The San Diego County Medical Examiner, Dr. Blackburn, who performed Gregory's autopsy, testified that Gregory had been deceased for at least an hour by the time paramedics arrived. The examiner also disclosed that Gregory was suffering from early-stage bronchopneumonia at the time of death. Breathing difficulties occur when lung secretions accumulate, often as a result of poor breathing. This can happen when a person is unconscious or taking very shallow breaths. Dr. Blackburn presented additional evidence, stating that Gregory's body contained a significant amount of urine in his bladder at the time of death. This accumulation would have caused severe discomfort if Gregory was conscious, suggesting he likely struggled to breathe for 6 to 12 hours before his death. Furthermore, Dr. Blackburn found it unlikely that Gregory, in an unconscious state, could have scattered rose petals on himself. During the trial, Dr. Blackburn also testified that the level of clonazepam in Gregory's blood was not high enough to be considered an overdose, and therefore, would not have been the cause of death. Dr. Theodore Stanley, testifying for the prosecution, stated that fentanyl, a powerful and fast-acting painkiller, can have severe side effects leading to respiratory arrest. The onset of its effects varies, based on the administration method. The fastest method of maximal effect is intravenous administration, which occurs within about 5 minutes. Intramuscular injection results in maximum effect within 15 to 20 minutes. This is followed by oral administration, with maximum effect within 20 to 30 minutes. The slowest method of maximal effect is the transdermal patch, which takes about 16 hours. Dr. Theodore testified before the court that fentanyl is typically not taken orally because the liver breaks down approximately 65% of the substance. As a result, only 35% of fentanyl is able to enter the bloodstream. However, when questioned about how fentanyl was detected in Gregory's body, neither Dr. Blackburn nor Dr. Theodore was able to provide a clear explanation. Dr. Theodore found that the amounts of fentanyl in Gregory's body, combined with the fact that Gregory had been unconscious and breathing shallowly for hours before his death, suggested that the fentanyl may have been given to Gregory by someone else. During the trial, the prosecution had difficulty explaining to the jury exactly how Kristen poisoned her husband. However, there was evidence that she may have applied a fentanyl patch to Gregory's arm while he was sleeping. Kristen's former workplace provided a crucial piece of evidence, as 15 fentanyl patches were discovered missing from the lab. While Kristen maintained her innocence, her defense team accepted that fentanyl was the cause of Gregory's death, but they suggested an alternative explanation. According to the defense, Gregory intentionally gave himself a fatal dose due to feelings of desperation about family problems. In court, Kristen recounted her of events on the morning of November 6th. She recalled waking up to find Gregory in a state of distress. Gregory called his employer at 7:42 a.m. to report his illness and informed them that he would not be going to work. Kristen claimed she left for work, but returned to their apartment during her lunch break to check on Gregory. When she asked him why he was so upset, Gregory replied that he was feeling unwell due to taking oxycodone and clonazepam and planned to stay home and rest. Kristen returned to work after that and came home around 8 p.m. Upon arrival, she found Gregory in bed and assumed he was asleep. She went to take a shower, and when came out, she tried to wake him, but when she touched him she felt cold. Kristen then immediately called emergency services. During questioning, the prosecutor questioned the validity of Kristen's explanation. She admitted to lying in the past and lying about her drug use, which made her testimony seem suspect. Autopsy and toxicology results showed that Gregory had been unconscious for approximately 6 to 8 hours before his death, contradicting Kristen's initial claim that they had lunch together that day. The defense argued that the concentration of clonazepam in Gregory's blood was not fatal on its own. However, they acknowledged that the combined effects of oxycodone, an opiate, and clonazepam, a benzodiazepine, could be more potent than the effects of either substance alone. They suggested that Gregory may have accidentally taken the drugs, but they could not explain why the high concentration of fentanyl was found in his body, which remains unexplained. After 8 hours of deliberation, the jury found Kristen guilty of first-degree murder and special circumstance murder due to poisoning. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Kristen claimed innocence and appealed the verdict in the appellate court, where a critical mistake by her own defense team was discovered. Her lawyers had admitted that fentanyl caused the death but failed to test the autopsy samples for fentanyl metabolites. This important test will help determine whether Gregory ingested fentanyl and whether the fentanyl in his body was due to contamination from laboratory testing rather than what he actually ate in. If fentanyl was only detected in the samples and not in Gregory's body, the prosecution's theory that fentanyl caused his death would be incorrect. The appeal also revealed a chain of custody violation regarding the samples. Although the samples were marked and placed in a cardboard box, the containers were not sealed. They were left at the medical examiner's office for approximately 36 hours before being shipped to the sheriff's forensic lab due to the recipient's absence. During this time, the samples were potentially accessible to anyone with a key to the medical examiner's office building, raising concerns that someone may have contaminated the samples. Kristen's appeal contends that any individual with a motive to falsify evidence could have added the substance to the sample. A panel of judges from the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reviewed Kristen's case and concluded that her lawyers had made a serious error. The prosecution claimed Gregory died of a fentanyl overdose. Kristen's lawyers, however, did not contest that claim. Instead, they accepted the fentanyl overdose explanation. The judges did not overturn the verdict but sent the case back to the lower court to decide whether the defense's error could have changed the outcome of the trial. The U.S. Supreme Court has issued a ruling stating that federal courts must respect the decisions made by state courts in similar cases. This ruling impacts Kristen's case, as the court has voted against a hearing and her appeal was denied, leaving her in custody. Kristen's trial was not the only part of the case. She had a co-defendant named Michael. Although he was not in the U.S. for the trial, he is still a part of the case and risks being arrested if he returns. However, he may be eligible for a $100,000 bail. Michael has been living in Australia, where he works as a forensic toxicologist. Kristen Rossum was arrested in 2003 and received a life sentence without parole. Gregory's family is now suing the county for allowing Kristen to steal a lethal dose of the same drug without detection, and they blame the county's negligence for her crime. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Jasmine Richardson. The Richardson family was widely admired for their friendly and hospitable personalities, which made everyone feel at home. Deborah, Mark, and their children, Tyler and Jasmine, lived in a cozy home. Their home is frequented by friends, and the family atmosphere is built on the principles of love and respect. However, things took a turn when Jasmine, their 12-year-old daughter, entered puberty. From a calm and obedient girl, she grew into a confident but also impulsive young woman. This new personality led to frequent conflicts with her parents, and her academic performance started to decline. Jasmine's interests changed in a big way. She switched from listening to modern pop music to heavy rock. In addition, her fashion style is no longer the same as before. Gone were the bright colors and cheerful clothing. Instead, she opted for a darker, more somber style that was often provocative. It was clear that Jasmine was trying to attract the attention of boys, and she began to accentuate the curves of her body. Her interaction with friends noticeably decreased as she began spending more time alone in her room, often with the door closed, glued to her computer screen. After the internet became available at home, her interests shifted to exploring Gothic themes, reading dark poetry, learning about criminal psychology, and studying human anatomy. She also became fascinated with criminal psychology and the Wiccan religion, referring to herself as a witch. She connected with like-minded individuals through websites focused on similar interests, forming a community of friends who shared her passions. Her social media page featured the greeting, "Welcome to my tragic world." Jasmine's behavior, initially thought to be a sign of puberty, but late became more concerning as she began to distance herself from her family. She created a fictional online persona, gave herself a different name, age, and began seeking relationships with people much older than her. Her parents tried their best to support her during this difficult period, suggesting that they spend time together by participating in common activities. However, Jasmine found these suggestions uninteresting. Her relationship with her younger brother deteriorated as she started speaking to him less frequently, viewing him as an annoyance. In stark contrast, she spends hours talking to strangers on social media, building other relationships, to make up for her lackluster relationships with family and friends. Deborah and Mark were aware that their daughter's new hobbies were likely a temporary phase of her youth. As a result, they were patient and allowed her to explore her interests. When Jasmine asked to attend a punk rock concert, her parents agreed. If only they had known the consequences that would follow this outing. In early 2006, Jasmine attended a local concert by a youth band that shared her interests. She also knew that Jeremy Steinke, a boy who had caught her attention for months, would be there. They had met online through a website for vampire enthusiasts and occasionally communicated with each other. Jeremy created an online persona as a 30-year-old werewolf who craved blood. To support this claim, he wore a vial of blood around his neck, but the origin of the fluid was unknown. Despite his ambiguity, he seems to believe he is unique, a quality Jasmine finds appealing and interesting. Jeremy and Jasmine connection deepened after meeting at a concert. Jeremy, however, was 23 years old, and the duo knew her parents would not approve of their relationship due to their significant age difference. As a result, they decided to keep their romance a secret. Complications in Jeremy's life were made worse by problems he had experienced earlier. He struggled financially and resided in a trailer with his mother and sister. His relationship with his mother was strained, largely because of her heavy drinking. This often led to violent arguments with some of her hot-tempered partners, who often abused Jeremy in drunken fits. By the age of 13, Jeremy was struggling academically and had mental health issues due to a troubled home life. He became so overwhelmed that he tried to hang himself, but fortunately, someone intervened in time. He was later diagnosed with depression and hyperactivity. Due to the relentless bullying he faced at school, Jeremy decided to stop attending. As Jeremy navigated the dark period of his life, he developed a passion for the concept of live immortally and began exploring online forums, where like-minded people shared thoughts and ideas. His online profile was filled with morbid topics, including self-harm, pain, and violence. Unbeknownst to their families, Jeremy had started a dating relationship with Jasmine. Their friends were aware of the relationship, but they found it strange due to the large age gap. Everything remained a secret until Jasmine's parents, Deborah and Mark, discovered her excessive internet use and decided to monitor her online activity. What they found alarmed them. Jasmine was in contact with strangers, including Jeremy. He is someone with a suspicious online identity. His nickname, Soul Eater, and interests in dark themes raised concerns, leading Jasmine's parents to intervene and restrict her access to the computer. They were shocked to learn that Jasmine was in a dating relationship with Jeremy, making it clear to them that this relationship was not acceptable under any circumstances. Deborah and Mark took their daughter Jasmine to see a psychologist, hoping she would get the help she needed to escape her toxic relationship. The counseling sessions greatly improved their parent-child relationship, and Jasmine appeared to be returning to a normal life, claiming the past was behind her. She regained access to her computer. Unfortunately, this turned out to be a wrong decision and proved fatal for Jasmine's family. On the evening of Saturday, April 22, 2006, as the family prepared for bed, Deborah heard a noise in the basement and went to investigate. She initially thought the noise might be rats but discovered a person wearing a ski mask instead. The masked man stood opposite Deborah, and her first reaction was to scream. The stranger attempted to silence her by covering her mouth but was unsuccessful, prompting Deborah to scream even louder. The assailant then stabbed Deborah in the chest with a knife, twice. Mark, hearing his wife's desperate cries for help, rushed down to the basement. He was met with a horrific scene. His wife lay in a pool of blood, with the attacker standing nearby. Mark quickly responded by attacking the intruder. However, he was stabbed in the stomach and sustained additional stab wounds. As Mark's pain began to subside and he was losing consciousness, he quietly asked the attacker why he did that. The attacker coldly replied that it was because Mark's daughter had wanted it that way. Upstairs, Tyler was left alone and scared as the attacker approached. Tyler was still in his pajamas and was paralyzed with fear. The footsteps grew louder and the bedroom door opened. Just a few days before the murder, Jasmine was happy since her parents had forgiven her, allowing her to reconnect with them. Mobile phones weren't widely used at that time, so Jasmine used the computer to communicate with the outside world. As soon as she regained internet access, she immediately contacted Jeremy. She told Jeremy, "Everyone will think you and I are crazy, but there's one way we can be together, if my parents disappear." However, what Jasmine didn't reveal to her parents was that she was secretly forming a plan to kill them while she was receiving therapy sessions. She shared this plan with Jeremy. He found the idea appealing, but he stressed that everything needed to be carefully, meticulously planned and that attention to detail was required. Jasmine realized that as long as her parents were alive, she would never be able to be with Jeremy. During this time, Jasmine's friends noticed that she often complained about her parents, expressing her annoyance towards them. What they don't realize is that Jasmine's resentment eventually leads her to want to end her parents' lives. Despite her frequent comments about killing her parents, but her friends considered it just a funny joke. Garrett crossed the street to his friend Tyler's house on Saturday, April 22, in 2006. He was excited to play, as the weather was pleasant. When he arrived at the Tyler's house, he noticed that the blinds were still closed, which seemed unusual. Even more unusual was that no one came to the door when he knocked. This surprised Garrett, as the Mark's car was parked in the driveway. Curious and hoping to find someone, Garrett peeked through the living room window but didn't see anyone. He then walked to the back of the house, towards the basement area where he often played with Tyler. As he looked through the window, he saw something strange on the floor, what appeared to be two people lying in a pool of blood. This disturbing discovery prompted Garrett to inform his mother. Garrett's mother seemed suspicious at first but decided to check on Tyler's family. They approached the house together, and Garrett pointed to the window he had looked through earlier. The woman peeked inside and was met with a horrific sight, immediately prompting her to call emergency services. "There's been an incident at the Jasmine's house," she reported. The police swiftly arrived at the scene and forcibly entered the house through the front door. They then proceeded to the basement. Due to the severity of their injuries and the large amount of blood, the police initially struggled to identify the bodies. However, despite the difficulties, they were eventually able to confirm that the victims were Mark and Deborah, and tragically, they had lost their lives. The crime scene was exceptionally horrific, with blood splatters covering the floor, walls, and ceiling. Later, during a thorough search of the house, the police found a young child in the upstairs bedroom. The boy was lying in bed, surrounded by toys also splattered with blood, and had visible knife wounds. A young boy's throat had been severely cut. As police searched the house, they realized that the Mark and Deborah's eldest daughter, Jasmine, was missing. This raised concerns for her safety. Initial investigations suggested that the attack occurred in the basement and the child's room, with the rest of the house appearing untouched. The condition of the boy's body indicated that the crime likely took place the previous night. It seemed that the perpetrator had broken into the house and attacked the boy and his parents. But what had happened to Jasmine, and where was she? The police developed several theories to explain her disappearance. One possibility was that she had managed to escape and was somewhere safe. Another possibility was that the perpetrator had taken her and was harming her. However, as the investigation continued, no clear answers emerged. Detectives turned to the media for assistance in locating the missing girl. Jasmine, hoping she would reach out or someone would come forward with valuable information. The investigation into the crime continued. Investigators interviewed relatives and friends of Mark's family and their colleagues to gather more detailed information about their lives. They sought to determine if the family had any enemies who could be capable of such a heinous act. However, upon further investigation, they learned that Mark's family was well loved and had no enemies. They were a loving family with a strong marriage and positive relationships with their children, except for one exception, their eldest daughter, Jasmine, who had been causing trouble lately. As a result, the media announcements shifted focus. The investigation now sought to locate the eldest daughter, Jasmine, a very suspicious person. The girl may have information about the case or might have been involved in it. Under Canadian law, which prohibits publishing the names of minors, so news outlets started referring to Jasmine Richardson as JR because she was underage at the time. After news of her relationship with Jeremy spread, this couple has become a wanted person by the police. The police initially focused on their friends and acquaintances. However, this line of investigation was ultimately unsuccessful, and the investigation reached a dead end. Police investigation revealed some new information. A few hours after the crime, Jasmine and Jeremy were seen at a restaurant and a party hosted by a friend. A friend noticed that Jasmine was fine, showing no signs of distress or trauma, and she continued to socialize, drink, and have fun. When friends asked how they managed to escape from her parents, Jasmine laughed and replied in a light-hearted manner. Jeremy and she took care of them. However, Jeremy's tone took a darker turn when he nodded in agreement, and then he added that he had cut them up like fish, implying a violent act had occurred. Jasmine's laughter downplayed the severity of the situation, making it seem less significant. The party guests burst out laughing, thinking that the remark was a sick joke. However, they did not realize that it was actually true. The guests' amusement was also verified by a comedian who was present. The police found a detailed plan in Jasmine's school locker, revealing her intentions to harm her family members with the help of her boyfriend. The photos of the suspects were widely circulated, and T is likely that they will be caught soon, as someone is expected to come forward with information about their whereabouts. Eventually, police received a tip and found Jasmine and Jeremy in Leader, Saskatchewan, about 130 kilometers from Medicine Hat. They were found sleeping in a pickup truck and were taken into custody without a struggle. Jasmine and her boyfriend, Jeremy, were questioned individually, with Jasmine being interviewed first. She told investigators that she and Jeremy were deeply in love and that he reciprocated her feelings. However, their relationship was impacted by two main issues: a large age gap and disparate social status. Jasmine claimed that her parents would never have approved of their relationship. According to Jasmine, Jeremy ended the lives of her parents so that they could be together. When detectives inquired about her involvement in the crime, Jasmine denied being present at the time it occurred and stated she had no prior knowledge of the event. After she found out what had happened, she decided to run away with him because her love for Jeremy was so great. Detectives needed to identify the mastermind behind the plot. To get the suspect to cooperate, investigators came up with a clever tactic. They placed an undercover informant in Jeremy's cell, who successfully extracted information from him that contradicted Jasmine's claims. According to Jeremy, the plan to kill Jasmine's parents was actually she's idea. Jeremy was initially hesitant about going along with the plan. However, after realizing his own feelings for Jasmine, he agreed to it. Additionally, Jasmine's parents confiscating her computer as punishment also influenced his decision. Jeremy confessed to the informant. He took care of she parents, Deborah and Mark, while Jasmine took care of her younger brother, Tyler. Jeremy reveals that she desperately begged him to spare Tyler and come to her, and he was happy to get revenge on them all. Following Jeremy's confession, investigators questioned Jasmine using the recorded conversation between them and he as evidence, which left her no choice but to reveal every detail of the crime. She admitted that she stabbed her younger brother, Tyler, stating she didn't want to leave him behind as an orphan. In the following investigation, Jasmine and Jeremy voluntarily shared their social media profiles and passwords. By doing this, investigators were able to look at their private conversations and found thousands of messages that backed up Jeremy's previous claims. It became clear that Jasmine was indeed the mastermind behind the plan. Further investigation also uncovered a disturbing dynamic between Jasmine and Jeremy. Jeremy wrote that Jasmine was the only person who accepted and supported his unusual tastes, helping to alleviate the feelings of isolation he experienced due to not fitting in with societal norms. Fearing that he would lose her, he agreed to help carry out the horrific plan. One of Jeremy's messages contained a chilling passage, exposing his desire for violence. Jeremy wrote that he wanted revenge on Jasmine's parents and was determined to hold them accountable. His intention was to harm them and eventually make them disappear. Jeremy showed his affection for Jasmine in her time of need. However, his friends revealed a disturbing fact. Hours before the incident, Jeremy and his girlfriend had watched the 1994 film Natural Born Killers. This movie tells the story of a couple who brutally murder 9 people. Jeremy's friends stated that after watching the film, he expressed a desire to reenact a similar scenario with his girlfriend, calling it the best love story of all time. Based on the evidence collected, including witness testimony and the suspect's confessions, Jasmine and Jeremy, detectives were able to reconstruct incidents surrounding the crime. This led to the suspects being charged with 3 homicide counts. Jeremy was intoxicated before the incident. Jasmine allowed him into the house and led him to the basement, where he assaulted Deborah, Jasmine's mother. Deborah received 12 stab wounds, with the most severe wound penetrating 12 centimeters into her chest and damaging her heart, which ultimately caused her death. Jeremy then brutally attacked Mark, Jasmine's father, inflicting 24 wounds, 9 of which were on his back. Mark also bled to death on the basement floor. Meanwhile, upstairs Jasmine stabbed her younger brother Tyler 5 times. Then, Jeremy joined her. He coldly slit the boy's throat. Jeremy returned home to clean the blood off himself, while Jasmine took a taxi to a restaurant where they had agreed to meet. Once reunited, they discussed the incident of the night and then went to a party. Jeremy's friend, Casey Lancaster, helped them dispose of the evidence and evade authorities by fleeing to Saskatchewan. The brutality and gruesomeness of their actions are difficult to put into words. Jeremy and Jasmine committed their heinous crimes with ease and without emotion. What is even more disturbing is that during interrogation and detention, neither of them expressed any regret or remorse for their actions. While they were detained, Jeremy and Jasmine wrote letters to each other, referring to themselves as legendary and immortal. In one of these letters, Jeremy submitted a marriage proposal to Jasmine, which she happily accepted. Jasmine and Jeremy's intense relationship fell apart suddenly. As trial began, they blamed each other for their actions. Jasmine was the first to face trial in June 2007. She entered a not guilty plea, claiming that she was in a trance-like state at the time, which left her unable to intervene or stop Jeremy from killing her family. Jasmine also asserted that she only injured her younger brother, and Jeremy was the one who caused her younger brother's death. She made a statement that her conversations with Jeremy about killing her parents were just hypothetical discussions. But Jeremy took them seriously and pressured her into making them a reality. Jasmine received a 10 years prison sentence for 3 counts of homicide. However, due to Canadian laws regarding juvenile offenders, this was the maximum sentence she could receive as she was under 14 years old at the time of the crime. The primary goal of the sentence was to focus on healing and restoring the girl's mental well-being, rather than punishing her. In a 10-prison sentence, including 4 years in a psychiatric facility. During her stay, doctors diagnosed her with 2 conditions: conduct disorder and oppositional defiant disorder. Jasmine showed genuine remorse for her actions in the years leading up to her release, which was noted by medical professionals during her community supervision. After serving her full sentence, Jasmine was released from prison in 2016 and has since been living in Canada under a new, protected identity. Her return to society has been met with mixed opinions, with some people supporting her right to a second chance, while others believe her punishment should have been more severe. The community in Medicine Hat has made it clear they do not want her to return. It remains to be seen whether Jasmine has truly changed and grown during her time in detention. Jeremy's trial began in 2008. He claimed that he had not initially intended to harm his girlfriend's parents, Deborah and Mark. However, after being discovered in a basement, he felt forced to attack. Jeremy denied harming Tyler and instead suggested that Jasmine was the one responsible. His defense argued that Jasmine had deliberately manipulated him into committing the crime, as she sought to escape her parents' strict control. Friends of Jeremy stated that he came to them before the crime. He confided in them his fear of losing Jasmine, to the point where he was willing to do anything to prevent it. Jeremy's lawyers asked the court to reduce the charges to manslaughter, suggesting that he was under the influence of substances at the time of the crime. When questioned by the prosecution about his motives, Jeremy gave an inconsistent response. He stated that when someone finds their soulmate, they will do whatever it takes to keep them. Throughout the trial, Jeremy remained largely unemotional, but broke down in tears when his mother, Jacqueline May, testified in his defense. Jacqueline felt guilty about the role she played in his upbringing, during which he was frequently physically and emotionally abused by her partners. In the end, Jeremy was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree homicide and received 3 life sentences. He will be eligible for parole in 25 years, starting in 2033. Casey Lancaster's charges related to being an accomplice in a crime have been dismissed in a Medicine Hat court. However, she was found guilty of obstructing justice. As a result, She received a 1-year sentence of house arrest and was prohibited from using drugs and alcohol during her custody. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jennifer Cave. Jennifer Cave was born in March 1984 near Bishop, Texas, to a family living on a modest farm. Her mother, Sharon, remarried, and her father, Charlie, was a welder. He was a good husband and father, but alcohol turned him into a troublemaker. However, when he was sober, he was calm. Despite the family's ups and downs, they remained close. Sharon worked as an accountant at a chemical plant while raising her family. Jennifer, unlike her outgoing siblings, was quite shy. Jennifer loved reading, which helped her develop her intelligence and memory. Despite her lack of self-confidence, Jennifer was active in school sports and social activities. Her father's abusive drinking habits tore the family apart. After her parents divorced, Jennifer and Clayton lived with their father. They felt great sympathy for him and tried to comfort him. Jennifer wanted her father to stop drinking so much that she ignored the fact that he really didn't want to change. For years after the divorce, in 1999, her mother, Sharon, met a new man named Jim Sedgwick. When Jennifer entered her teens, she changed. She got her braces off, got new glasses, and her appearance became much better. Her personality changed along with her new look. She graduated at the top of her class thanks to her intelligence. Jennifer enrolled in Texas State University as a finance major, but quickly became discouraged and dropped out after her first semester. She then attended community college in Austin and worked part-time at a restaurant in the city to support herself. During this time, she dated Mark, a nice guy from a good family. Their relationship could have led to marriage, but Jennifer became addicted to the nightlife. She partied and drank frequently. Her time spent drinking increased, and along with her marijuana use, her bad habits gradually took over her life. Jennifer's life took a turn when she meets Colton Petoniak. Colton Petoniak was born and raised in Bryant, Arkansas. During his youth, he was known as a smart, attractive boy who was popular with many girls. Colton has a passion for skateboarding and playing the guitar. He attends an all-boys Catholic middle school in Little Rock, where he consistently excels academically and is often named honor roll student. In 2000, Colton was one of 7 seniors and one of 166 statewide finalists for the National Honor Society. During his senior year, he began to have problems with alcohol and violence. This was largely due to his involvement with a wealthy youth group. Colton Petoniak was born and raised in Bryant, Arkansas. During his youth, he was known as a smart, attractive boy who was popular with many girls. However, instead of focusing on his studies, he continued his debauched lifestyle. This led to him losing friends and becoming known for his addiction to alcohol and marijuana. He could have had a bright future if not for these self-destructive habits. After being expelled from his fraternity, he began to engage in illegal drug dealing. His family tried to support him through this, even bringing him back home to live with them. In the spring of 2004, Jennifer and Colton met at a party and immediately connected. Jennifer, always optimistic, decided to give their relationship a try, despite the risks involved. Over time, their friendship gradually developed into a romantic relationship. Jennifer began using drugs with Colton. Colton's luxury apartment became their regular hideout for illegal drug use. Jennifer's addiction became more serious. Her parents tried many times to help her get off drugs, even giving her a car in the hopes that she would come home more often. However, every time Jennifer came home, she failed to keep her promise to quit her addiction. During that time, Colton's condition also gradually worsened. He became paranoid and started carrying weapons to create the image of someone with a criminal record. In 2004, Colton was arrested for illegal drug possession. He later entered rehab. Elsewhere, Jennifer's relationship with her family deteriorated when her parents visited her. They were completely shocked to see that Jennifer had lost a lot of weight. Her image was no longer as healthy as before. Refusing the family's advice to go to a drug treatment center upset Jennifer's parents. Because of that, Sharon and her new husband, Jim, made the decision to stop supporting her financially. They hoped that because of that, she would make more efforts to get her life back. Jennifer did not have enough money to survive on her own, so she was forced to live with Colton. However, after a month of living together, she decided to leave due to some unexpected events. Fortunately, a friend helped her not only by providing a place to stay but also by providing emotional support. After a difficult time, Jennifer's life seemed to be back on track. In early 2005, she began a new relationship with a man named Scott, a nice single father. Scott's lifestyle was the complete opposite of Colton's. Scott worked at a restaurant, sang well, and maintained a healthy lifestyle. When she was with him, Jennifer felt better about herself and looked healthier. She took on the role of a housewife and became the ideal mother figure for his daughter. However, she was still ready to leave at any time if Colton called. On another hand, Colton moved to the Orange Tree apartment complex near the university, where there were parties every weekend. His image changed the views of the people who frequented the place. In addition, there were many healthy things. In the comfortable pace of life, he met Laura Ashley Hall. In contrast to Colton, Laura was infatuated with this man and often showed jealousy towards the other women in the group, especially Jennifer. Laura made a different impression on their friends, who wondered why she was so arrogant and often made fun of anyone. Laura, like Colton, also came from a well-off family. She was an active person, participated in many different activities, and was successful in her studies. After graduating from high school, she enrolled in college but soon dropped out, choosing instead a more comfortable job and lifestyle. Later, Laura and Colton began a romantic relationship. She was also deeply attracted to Colton, like Jennifer. However, Laura's friends noticed that she had changed for the worse, becoming more aggressive, neglecting her work, and not taking care of herself. Many suspected that she had also started using illegal drugs. Beside that, Jennifer entered a new chapter after ending her relationship with Scott. She felt that she did not fit in with his family and did not want to cause trouble. However, she still kept in touch with Colton, who was still deeply in love with her. Regarding their relationship, Jennifer just wanted to keep it as friends. She wanted to get a stable job and go back to college. In August, a new opportunity appeared in her life. She started a new romantic relationship with Michael Rodriguez and found a great job. At a law firm, she impressed everyone after her training and was offered a high-paying consultant position. She was proud of herself and felt truly happy. On August 16th, Jennifer decided to celebrate her new life with her friends. They went to a bar and then to a club. According to a friend, the bouncer at the club refused to let Colton in because of his appearance. This may have led him to turn to drugs. The investigation is still ongoing to shed light on the events that happened that fateful night. The next morning, Jennifer's boyfriend, Michael Rodriguez, checked his phone but found no calls from Jennifer. He recalled that she had promised to call him after dropping Colton off. Michael did not trust Colton's character and lifestyle and was concerned. Around the same time, Jennifer's roommate noticed that she had not come home the night before. The alarm clock was still going off, but no one had turned it off. This worried her roommates as they had a habit of informing each other about their plans. Jennifer's roommate tried to contact her but received no response, which was out of character for her. She was still scheduled to go to work that day, but her work clothes were still hanging on the rack, with no sign that she had put them on and left. This made her roommates even more worried because Jennifer was not the type to leave for work without informing them. The law firm was notified on the morning of August 17th that new employee Jennifer Cave had not arrived for work on time. This was unusual because she had made a good impression during her internship. When a colleague called her at 9 a.m., there was no answer. At 11 a.m., the firm decided to send someone to check Jennifer's home, but there was no answer. The firm contacted Jennifer's mother, Sharon Sedgwick, and discovered that she had also been unable to reach her daughter. The family suspected that Jennifer might have gotten back together with her ex-boyfriend Colton Petoniak, whom they did not like. After more than 12 hours without any news of Jennifer, Sharon reported her daughter missing to the police. The Sedgwicks visited Colton's home, but he refused to meet with them. Jennifer's car was found near Colton's home, making the situation even more suspicious. Although the police searched Jennifer's home and found nothing unusual, they are still investigating based on information from Michael and Sharon, along with the fact that Jennifer's car was found near Colton's home. Sharon and her new husband, Jim, believe that something serious has happened to their daughter. Michael said that Jennifer went out with friends on August 16th to celebrate her new job. One of her friends was her ex-boyfriend, Colton. Jennifer called Michael several times and told him that she wasn't scared but that Colton was acting strangely and that she needed to take him home. However, she did not contact Michael after that. All the clues led investigators to where Colton lived. While the police were still deciding what to do, Sharon and Jim decided to take action themselves. They went to Colton's house and knocked on the door, but no one answered. They sensed something was wrong and were about to call a locksmith to open the door. But Jim suddenly discovered an open window and decided to climb in through it. Once inside, he found the apartment in complete disarray. As soon as he entered, Jim was hit by a stench so bad it made him nauseous. He immediately covered his mouth and moved toward the stronger smell. Sure enough, the entire house was empty. And in the bathroom, Jim discovered a gruesome sight, a woman whose head and limbs had been cut off. Nearby, he also found some trash bags and a gym bag. Jim was horrified when he checked inside and discovered the victim's remaining body parts. The freckled legs looked very similar to his stepdaughter's. But the victim's body was so mutilated that it was difficult to identify. Still, Jim hoped the worst would be over for his daughter until the last minute. After calming down a bit, he immediately called an ambulance. Jennifer Cave met a tragic death from being shot in the right arm. The bullet went through her arm, chest, and into her heart, also damaging a major artery. This led to severe blood loss and caused her to die quickly. After that, her body went through incredible and terrifying changes. Forensic experts discovered 18 stab wounds on the victim's body, mainly in the chest and neck. The perpetrator inflicted these wounds after the victim was dead. He then decapitated the victim and shot a bullet through the throat into the head, intending to dismember the victim to easily dispose of the body. The perpetrator severed the victim's upper limbs and placed them in a prepared bag and a garbage bag. The body was left in the bathtub, covered with a saw. However, something thwarted his original plan, forcing him to change his course of action. After receiving a search warrant, the police conducted a thorough investigation of the apartment. Police found .38 caliber shell casings in the apartment. The murder weapon was found in Petoniak's car parked in the garage. They also found a large bloody machete in the dishwasher. Toxicology tests showed that the victim had alcohol, marijuana, and methamphetamine in his blood. A road atlas was found at the scene with pages torn out, marking routes in southwest Texas. This suggested that the apartment owner, Colton Petoniak, had fled. Police immediately issued a warrant for his arrest. Investigators conducted interviews with Colton's neighbors to gather information. Nora Sullivan, one of the neighbors, witnessed a suspicious incident at approximately 3 a.m. on August 17th. When she opened the door, she found Colton standing there with blood on his body and a handgun in his waistband. Nora asked him what happened, and Colton said he had gotten into a gunfight with several people. However, Nora did not hear any gunshots that night and suspected he was lying. Investigators also discovered that Colton had contacted Laura twice that night, but did not have specific details about the conversation. On the morning of August 17th, Colton went to a hardware store and purchased items such as a saw, mask, gloves, and cleaning supplies. He used these items to destroy Jennifer's body and planned to clean up the apartment to remove any traces of the crime. However, at that time, the couple Sharon and Jim unexpectedly appeared, possibly scaring Colton into running away, foiling his plan. While investigating Colton's apartment, investigators found a vital clue that led directly to him. He and Laura Hall were spotted in Mexico, where they had crossed the border in her car. Local authorities circulated Colton's photo nationwide during that time. The couple enjoyed their time going to movies and restaurants. They stayed at a hotel in the border town of Piedras Negras, where an employee recognized him as a wanted man. The employee took a photo of him and sent it to the police. Mexican law enforcement arrested the couple and took them to the border, where U.S. officials arrested them. Laura Hall was released from custody pending further investigation. On August 23, 2005, Colton was charged with the felony murder of Jennifer Cave. A month later, Laura Hall was arrested and charged with tampering with evidence and obstruction of justice. The prosecution presented evidence recovered from Colton's apartment, including a videotape from the store and receipts for the items purchased. Colton claimed he had no memory of the night of the crime due to amnesia caused by excessive alcohol and illegal drug use. He did not initially deny harming Jennifer, but insisted he had no memory. He claimed that he woke up to find his ex-girlfriend's body in the bathroom later that day. After discovering the body, he contacted Laura, who advised him to purchase a saw and cleaning supplies. She helped Colton dismember the victim and hide the parts in bags. The prosecution argued that Laura was responsible for Jennifer's injuries after her death. Colton later suggested that Laura may have been motivated by jealousy and implied that she was involved in the act of revenge. However, both defendants pleaded not guilty. But the evidence of Colton's responsibility was overwhelming. Jennifer's body was discovered in Colton's apartment. His fingerprints and DNA were found on items such as knives, saws, and guns collected at the crime scene. Colton's car also contained weapons related to the crime. He also purchased cleaning supplies from the store. The jury had no doubt about Colton's guilt. On January 29, 2007, Colton was sentenced to 55 years in prison, but could be eligible for parole after serving at least half of his sentence. This means Colton won't be released until 2060 at the earliest. The case against Laura Hall is more complicated. The prosecution argues that she may have acted out of blind love for Colton. Laura's DNA was found on one of the victim's shoes, a shop towel, and even the gun used. However, the defense argues that these traces only prove her involvement in dumping the body, not the initial act. They can't prove she fired the first shot. Laura claims she only learned about the case after Colton told her about it and that she was forced to flee to Mexico with him. However, witnesses to their time in Mexico said the couple seemed happy on the trip. In 2007, Laura was convicted of obstruction of justice and tampering with evidence and sentenced to 6 years in prison. A subsequent trial in 2010 increased the sentence to 11 years in prison and a $144,000 fine. Laura was eventually released on parole on March 15, 2018, with GPS monitoring. She completed her sentence in August of that year. After her parole, Laura's whereabouts remain unknown. Colton Petoniak remains in prison after multiple unsuccessful appeals. In his appeals, Colton claims he has no memory of the events surrounding Jennifer's death. However, he asserts that several witnesses heard Laura confess to the crime and that the prosecution knowingly withheld this information from his defense team, potentially setting him up. Despite Colton's allegations, his appeals have been denied, raising public questions about the case. Jennifer's parents, however, firmly believe that Laura was more involved in the death than she admits and that her punishment was too lenient. Unlike Colton, Laura has shown no remorse or regret for Jennifer's death, referring to her in derogatory terms. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Teresa Halbach. Teresa was born on March 22, 1980, to parents Richard and Karen Halbach. She was the youngest of 5 siblings, and the family she lived on a dairy farm. When Teresa was 8 years old, tragedy struck as her father passed away, leaving Karen to care for the family alone. Karen later married her Richard's brother, Thomas, and together they raised their blended family. Teresa is an adventurous and nature-loving individual who dreamed of becoming a National Geographic photojournalist. She excelled academically, graduating summa cum laude from the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay with a degree in photography. After college, Teresa continued her work with Pierce Photography, a company where she had interned during her studies. She also launched her own business, Photography by Teresa, operating from the Pierce studio. Teresa traveled extensively for her work and to supplement her income. She took on freelance photography jobs for Auto Trader magazine, photographing vehicles for sale. Tragically, this job ultimately resulted in her premature death. All evidence pointed to a single suspect, Stephen Avery. He had contacted Teresa to schedule a photo shoot of his sister's minivan. According to records, Teresa was last seen at 2:30 p.m. that afternoon. This was later confirmed by Stephen's nephew, Bobby, who told the police that he saw Teresa's car enter the salvage yard. Stephen was originally charged with using a gun on November 11, 2005. Subsequent charges included the murder of Teresa Halbach, her kidnapping, and the mutilation of her body. However, while being investigated for these crimes, the police found blood in the SUV Teresa's that matched Stephen's. In his room, they discovered a set of car keys belonging to Teresa. Throughout the investigation, he insisted that the police were attempting to frame him. Stephen was born on July 9, 1962, in Wisconsin, where he grew up with his parents Dolores and Alan, and siblings Charles, Earl, and Barbara. However, he had a troubled past, having dropped out of high school with a reported IQ of 70. In 1981, he was jailed for 10 months after breaking into a bar. In the following year, he was found guilty of animal cruelty for brutally killing his pet cat. The cat was doused with gasoline and set on fire, resulting in a 9-month prison sentence. Stephen had a record of behaving violently in the past, including an incident where he threatened his cousin, Sharon Morris. He chased her off the street and pointed a gun at her, claiming that she was spreading false rumors about him. Although Stephen received a 6-year sentence for this crime, but then he was given bail. However, an incident led to his wrongful imprisonment for nearly 2 decades. Henny Bernstein was attacked on a beach in Two Rivers on July 29, 1985. She described her attacker to the police, and the description closely matched Stephen. As a result, he was arrested and charged with the attack on Penny. Despite his claims of innocence, his appeals in 1987 and 1996 were denied by higher courts. Stephen's case was later taken on by the Wisconsin Innocence Project in 2001. In 2002, DNA evidence was re-examined, and he was finally exonerated of the crimes, proving his innocence. Following his exoneration, he filed a civil lawsuit against Thomas Kokarek, the former sheriff, and Dennis Vogel, the former district attorney, seeking $36 million in damages for the wrongful conviction. However, Stephen's freedom does not last long because his life is about to undergo a major change. When Teresa, a friend of Stevens, went missing, a search was conducted at a local salvage yard. This search was initiated based on information given by Bobby, Stevens' nephew. Steven reported that Teresa came to his location to take photos and then left. However, evidence found at the scene contradicts Stevens' testimony. These included bone fragments, a set of SUV car keys, blood in a vehicle, and a bullet from the garage with Teresa's DNA on it. As a result, Steven was jailed for Teresa's murder. During this time, he received a sum of $400,000 in a settlement in February 2006. The investigation also involved questioning Steven's 16-year-old nephew, Brendan Dassey. It is worth noting that Brendan was not accompanied by his parents or lawyer during the interrogation process. Initially, Brendan confessed to the crime, stating that he and Brendan had assaulted and killed Teresa before burning her body. However, Brendan later withdrew his statement, claiming that detectives had coerced him into making a false confession. In 2006, Brendan was charged as an accessory to the murder, a charge that stemmed from his initial statement. Despite the lack of physical evidence connecting him to the crime scene, but he faced the same charges as Steven. In 2007, Steven was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Later that year, Brendan was also found guilty, a life sentence with the possibility of parole in 2048. A conviction was made, but it was met with controversy. Many people, including Steven's family and his ex-fiancée Sandy Greenman, still firmly believe that Steven and Brendan are innocent. Steven's family continues to support him and hope that the real killer will be found. Sandy has been a vocal advocate for Steven. She described Steven as a model inmate and argues that people wrongly tarnish his reputation. Sandy spoke out in Brendan's defense, denying allegations that he had a history of violence. In contrast, some people firmly believe that Steven is guilty and should be in prison. One of these individuals is Jody Stokowski, another ex-fiancée of Steven's. Jody initially supported Steven's claim of innocence, but she later admitted that had made it up. In an interview, Jody revealed that Steven had threatened to harm her and her family. Therefore, she believes that he is capable of murder. Jody said that Steven wanted revenge on women, believing that he had been treated unfairly and that his life had been affected because of it. She strongly believes that Steven is untrustworthy and described him as a monster. Steven's defense team questioned the reliability of the blood evidence found in Teresa's car. They argued that the evidence may not have come from the crime scene, but from another source, taken from the vial containing Steven's blood from a prior conviction. They claimed that the vial containing Steven's blood had been tampered with and a hole could be seen in the cork. However, the prosecution countered this by conducting blood tests to check for preservatives that are often added to stored blood samples. Since no preservatives were detected, this could indicate that the blood was not old but newly drawn. Tive, which could suggest that the blood was fresh. Steven's defense team disputed this finding, they calling in an expert witness, who claimed that the test results were unclear, and negative result could mean that there really is no preservative or that the testing technology is not advanced enough to detect preservatives. Both Steven and Brendan have repeatedly appealed their convictions, but have been denied and they remain incarcerated. Brendan is currently be justified. Professors Laura Nyroder and Brendan Drizin from Northwestern University. They have also faced many hurdles, but they remain committed to seeking justice for Brendan. In Steven's case, the appointment of Kathleen Zellner, a renowned trial lawyer, has injected new hope. Kathleen has a track record of overturning 19 wrongful convictions and is known for her thorough analysis of cases and her ability to uncover missing evidence. She quickly got to work on Steven's case, and she firmly believes in his innocence. Steven's previous lawyers, Dean Strang and Jerry Buting, have stepped back from the case. In August 2016, Kathleen requested that new scientific tests be conducted on evidence from the case, and she was willing to cover the costs. Her goal was to prove that Stephen was framed for the crime. She focused on 3 burn pits found at the scene, which showed signs of human remains being burned. Notably, a human pelvic bone fragment was discovered, which had been mistakenly included with Teresa's remains. This discovery suggests that Teresa's remains may have been intentionally placed in Stephen's burn pit. Unfortunately, the defense was denied the chance to examine these bones because the prosecution failed to disclose them. Kathleen claimed that this was a Brady violation, meaning that crucial evidence that could have helped exonerate Stephen was not provided in time. Despite this setback, Kathleen continued to investigate the case from a new angle, which could lead to the identification of a new suspect. Kathleen decided to investigate the Bobby family's computer as an alternative to testing the bone fragments. The computer analysis revealed several disturbing findings, including violent and pornographic images of women being tortured and videos showing women as victims. These materials were accessed at times when Bobby was supposedly at home. Furthermore, Barbara Taddick, Bobby and Brendan's mother, her husband Scott, and Stephen's sister seemed to conceal evidence to avoid implicating Bobby. The forensic team successfully recovered 2,449 pages of data from the computer, including all of Bobby's searches, videos, and photos, and transferred it to a CD-ROM as evidence for the retrial. Bobby is the older brother of Brendan and the nephew of Stephen. During his uncle Stephen's trial, Bobby served as the prosecution's key eyewitness. According to Bobby, the last time he saw Teresa, she was heading towards Stephen's house. Later that afternoon, after returning from hunting, Bobby claimed that he was unable to find Teresa or her car. Brad Dassey, the half-brother of Bobby, has made several claims that have added. He believes Stephen is innocent. Additionally, Brad has stated that Barbara and Scott erased the computer's history, including all pornographic content. A key piece of evidence could potentially clear Stephen and Brendan's names, while further implicating Bobby. An eyewitness, Thomas Sawinski, has come forward claiming to have seen Bobby with an older man pushing Teresa's SUV back into the salvage yard. Thomas stated that he was driving to deliver newspapers when he saw the duo. As he passed them, Bobby attempted to stop him by stepping into the road. Thomas swerved to avoid Bobby and continued on his route. Thomas described Bobby as appearing unhappy to see him there. After learning about the SUV's discovery, Thomas contacted police to share what he had seen. However, the police rejected this, who told him they already knew who is the culprit. New testimony has cast doubt on the credibility of the prosecution's key witness, Bobby. Kathleen believes that if Thomas's claims are true, then Bobby's entire statement is false. She argued that the rejection of key evidence supporting Stephen's case deprived him of the opportunity to prove his innocence for years. The appeals court is considering the new evidence and make a decision in November 2022. Kathleen continues to represent those she believes have been wrongfully convicted. However, throughout the process, Brendan has maintained his innocence. The question remains as to whether Stephen is truly guilty. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of William Lewis Reese. William Lewis Reese was born in Oklahoma on July 1, 1959, the youngest of 13 children in his family. He grew up in Yukon and Anadarko. Due to his family's financial struggles, he had to drop out of school in the 9th grade to work as a farm laborer. He married Judy Flaming in 1979 after she became pregnant. After getting married, William joined the Oklahoma National Guard but eventually left. During this time, his marriage began to unravel, and Judy divorced him after just 1 year. However, William convinced Judy to remarry him, and they had another child together. Unfortunately, their marriage problems persisted, and heavy drinking led to physical abuse against Judy, ultimately causing their marriage to end again. Judy filed a complaint against her husband in 1982 after he physically abused her, claiming that he also threatened her life with a knife and a shotgun. As a result, Judy divorced him for the second time. William later remarried to another woman. However, this marriage was also short-lived, as his second wife divorced him just a few months later. And William's string of crimes resumed shortly after. In April 1986, William kidnapped a 19-year-old woman who was the daughter of a Texas sheriff's deputy. The woman's car broke down on her way to the gym, and William, who worked as a truck driver at that time, approached her and offered assistance by promising to take her to the nearest payphone in his truck. Once inside the vehicle, he restrained her and committed a sexual assault. He then drove her to a nearby motel where he reserved a room for the night. When Williams gave her permission to use the bathroom, she took advantage of the chance to break free and phone the police. He then was arrested, charged, and then released after posting bail. However, a month later, while still awaiting trial, he committed another sexual assault, resulting in a second arrest. Williams stood trial for both crimes, was found guilty, and received the 25 years prison sentence. However, upon reviewing his case, an appeals court found that there were procedural errors in the original trial. As a result, his sentence was significantly shortened and ultimately led to his parole in October 1996. William moved into his mother's home in Anadarko, Oklahoma, after serving 9.5 years. He regained his driver's license in early 1997 and then relocated to Houston, Texas. Shortly after, on May 16, 1997, he attempted to abduct and sexually assault Sandra Sapah, a 19-year-old. When Sandra stopped at a gas station in Webster, Texas, to use a payphone. After the call, she returned to her car and began driving but soon had a flat tire, forcing her to stop again. As she stood there, unsure of what to do next, William stopped the car behind her and offered to help. Sandra accepted his offer and got into the truck. However, William's intentions were sinister and he overpowered her, binding her wrists, then he continuing to drive on Interstate 45. Panicking, Sandra discovered that the door was unlocked. Despite being pregnant and fear for her life, Sandra made an attempt to escape by breaking free from the restraints and jumping out. Unfortunately, William caught hold of her and dragged her several miles along the pavement, causing severe injuries. Eventually, Sandra managed to break free and was taken to a nearby hospital. The police were notified, and she provided a description of her attacker. However, due to her traumatic state, she was unable to recall crucial details about the incident. To catch the predator, detectives needed more information. Months after the attack, they decided to use hypnosis on Sandra to see if she could remember anything else. Under hypnosis, Sandra recalled crucial details, including the license plate number of the truck that was involved in the crime. The detectives discovered a lead when they tracked down the owner of the vehicle with the matching license plate number. William was convicted of aggravated kidnapping and sentenced to 60 years in prison in 1998. While he was serving his sentence, detectives began to suspect that he might be linked to other crimes. Unraveling these secrets took years, leaving several families without answers. On a rainy April 3, 1997, 12-year-old Laura Smither asked her mother for permission to go jogging by herself at 9 a.m. Her mother agreed, not knowing that this ordinary decision would change her life forever. Laura Smither is the daughter of Bob and Gay Smither. She grew up in Friendswood, along with her younger brother. From an early age, Laura demonstrated a kind and gentle nature. She excelled academically and showed great talent in ballet. After being accepted into the prestigious Houston Ballet Academy, her goal of becoming a professional ballerina became a reality just days before this tragic incident. Laura's mother was surprised when she asked to go jogging that day, as she rarely ventured out alone. Homeschooled by her parents, Laura didn't even attend school. However, her desire to improve her dance skills had recently inspired her to take up cardio exercises, such as jogging. She had planned to go for a short run while making breakfast, and her mother agreed, she unaware of the danger lurking nearby. When Laura failed to return after a few hours, her parents began to worry. Normally, Laura was under close supervision and never went out alone for long. Her father, Bob Smither, searched the neighborhood but found no sign of her. He figured his daughter wouldn't be out for long, but she later didn't come back. Laura's parents reached out to relatives and friends to see if anyone had any information about her whereabouts, but no one had seen her. And they contacted the police to file a missing persons report. According to Bob, Laura went jogging this morning and it took longer than he expected. As police began their investigation, locals joined Laura's family to assist in the search. With photos of Laura in hand, her family and neighbors went door to door, asking if anyone had any information. The next morning, the police resumed their search, on foot combing through the nearby woods and helicopters scouring the area from above. Despite the initial lack of leads, the community's determination never wavered. Hundreds of volunteers joined the cause, and the eventually swelling to 6,000 volunteers for a week. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies worked diligently to locate Laura. The National Coast Guard and the FBI also joined forces with the local police department to aid in the extensive search operation. Initial theories suggested that Laura may have become lost in the woods, but after that, the investigation went in one direction, now focus on the possibility of criminal behavior. On Sunday, April 20th, 1997, a gathering at Friendswood High School was taking place to discuss the next steps in finding Laura. During this meeting, the police chief expression became anxious after receiving the phone call, leaving those present there wondering what made him react like that. That evening at 10 p.m., Laura's parents received devastating news. A man walking his dog near a retention pond in Pasadena, about 12 miles from where Laura went missing, stumbled upon a badly decomposing body of a young girl. The girl was wearing only a pair of socks and was found in a muddy area. The police immediately suspected that the body was Laura's, and this was later confirmed through an autopsy. Everyone was devastated by the sudden and tragic loss of Laura. In addition to their grief, fear gripped the neighborhood, with many worried that a predator was on the loose and could target another child. To address these concerns and prevent further harm, the police opened an investigation, but initially they had no information about the perpetrator. To gather more information, the police started interviewing sex offenders in the area. They began to focus on William Reese, a 38-year-old equipment operator, was working at Windsor Estate in Friendswood at the time. On the day of Laura's disappearance, William left the workplace around the time she went missing and returned 30 minutes later, it raising suspicions about his activities during that short period. Police conducted an in-depth investigation but were unable to find any evidence shows that William is involved in this crime. As a result, the case went unsolved for years, leaving many questions unanswered. 19 years later, another mysterious disappearance happened to Kelly Cox, 20 years old. Kelly, a criminology student at the University of North Texas. In Denton on July 15, 1997, she and her classmates took a field trip to a local prison in Denton for a criminology class. She left her car in the parking lot across from the police station and had hidden a spare key in a magnetic box underneath her car. She then locked her belongings, including her cell phone, inside the car as instructed by her professor. After completing the jail tour at noon, Kelly rushed to her car to go to the university to take a test. However, when she tried to use the spare key to open her car door, it did not work, despite she checking it the night before. Since Kelly's phone was locked in her car, so she went to a nearby gas station and used a payphone to call her boyfriend, Lawrence Harris III, for help. She then purchased a drink inside the gas station. But from that point on, Kelly was never seen alive again. After about 45 minutes, Lawrence arrived at the meeting place, but when he got there, her car was still in the parking lot, yet Kelly herself was nowhere to be found. Neither the key box nor the key were present at the scene. He spent some time searching for Kelly, and when he couldn't find her, he decided to call her mother to see if she had returned home safely. However, Kelly's mother informed him that she hadn't arrived. Despite the initial suspicion surrounding Kelly's disappearance, but her family chose to wait a little longer to see if she would come back. It wasn't until 5:30 p.m. that same day when Kelly failed to pick up her 19-month-old daughter, Alexis, from her babysitter, that her family became certain that something was amiss. Kelly's family knew that she was a responsible mother, and it was entirely out of character for her to neglect her daughter like that. When Kelly was reported missing, the police immediately started searching for her. In keeping with standard procedure in missing persons cases, the police started by scrutinizing people close to Kelly. Initially, they focused on Kelly's boyfriend Lawrence, but after he passed 4 polygraph tests, he was cleared as a suspect. The case made progress when information led them to another potential suspect, William Reese, who had been under investigation in the Laura Smithers case. William, a sex offender, was considered a top suspect in Kelly's disappearance because a gas station receipt placed him in the Denton area on the same day Kelly vanished, even though he didn't live there at the time. The police searched his car for Kelly's fingerprints but did not find any. Without any leads, witnesses, or surveillance footage, the case stalled and went unsolved for many years. Kelly's disappearance was extremely difficult for her mother and stepfather, who had to raise Alexis on their own. As the years went by, Kelly never returned, but her daughter followed in her mother's footsteps, attending the same university. Alexis held on to the hope that her mother would come back one day. Kelly's family never lost hope of her return, continued to share her story, and kept her picture visible. Unfortunately, their wish never came true, and Kelly never made it back home. On the morning of August 17, 1997, Jessica Kane, a 17-year-old high school student, failed to return home after attending a theater party the night before. Jessica was born on August 28, 1979. She is known for her vibrant personality, creativity, and passion for sports. While studying at O'Connell High School in Galveston, Texas, she did well academically and served as captain of the school's coaching team. After focusing on her drama career and participating in numerous plays, Jessica attended a musical review in Dickinson on August 16, 1997. Following the event, she joined her friends at a cast party at Bennigan's on Bay Avenue Boulevard. However, Jessica did not return home that night, worrying her mother, who woke her father and called her. They reached out to several friends who had attended the party with Jessica, and all of them reported that she had left around 1:30 a.m. Jessica's parents immediately sensed that something was wrong and began searching for her. Upon investigating, Jessica's father found her vehicle parked near the Lamarck exit, close to the freeway, with her valuables still intact. He later quickly reported his to the police. As police began their investigation, hundreds of volunteers joined in the search for Jessica. During this challenging time, Jessica's parents met Bob and Gay Smither, a couple who had also lost their daughter, Laura Smither. Jessica's family and the Smithers family are going through their own grief. The Smithers family has tried to support Jessica's parents in their search for her. Despite the best efforts of police and volunteers, no sign of Jessica has been found. As a result, police are beginning to consider foul play and believe the chances of Jessica being found alive are extremely low. The case eventually went cold, but Jessica's family never gave up searching for their daughter. In a separate incident, on July 26, 1997, 19-year-old Tiffany Johnson's car was found abandoned at a car wash in Bethany, Oklahoma. But she disappeared without a trace. Tiffany was born on April 6, 1978, to Michael and Kathy Dober. She was the youngest daughter, extremely close to her family, especially her mother. Tiffany was a lively and optimistic young woman who grew up in a small town, with a passion for plants and gardening that she inherited from her grandfather. After graduating from high school in 1996, she married Ryan Johnson in 1997 and moved to Bethany, Oklahoma, where she took on 2 jobs to save money for college. Her dream was to attend Oklahoma State University to pursue a degree in botany. But unfortunately, that goal was never realized. On July 26, 1997, Tiffany finished her part-time shift at a restaurant around 2 p.m. She later headed home to get ready for a night out with her husband, Ryan, to celebrate their 3-month anniversary. Tiffany was supposed to meet Ryan at 11 p.m., but before that, she stopped at the Sunshine Car Wash to wash her white neon Dodge. Tragically, she was never seen again. When Ryan went looking for her that night, he couldn't find her at home and found no signs of her whereabouts. A police officer from the Bethany Police Department discovered Tiffany's abandoned white Dodge Neon at a car wash around midnight. The car's key was still in the ignition, and the door was open. The officer found Tiffany's purse inside the vehicle and a phone number for her mother, Kathy, in the glove box. However, when contacted, Kathy had no information about her daughter's whereabouts. The investigators then reached out to Tiffany's husband, Ryan, who also claimed to be unaware of his wife's location. This raised concerns, and it became apparent that something was amiss. The next day, July 27, 1997, near I-40 and Gregory Road, searchers found a body of a young Caucasian woman. When the police arrived at the scene, they suspected the body might be Tiffany's. The suspicion was confirmed when her husband Ryan identified the body from the pictures. Tiffany's body was found with only a swimsuit on, as all other clothing had been removed. The autopsy results revealed that Tiffany was sexually assaulted and strangled to death, although the exact time of her death could not be confirmed. Authorities collected unknown DNA from her body as evidence. With no leads on a suspect, investigators initially focused on Ryan, Tiffany's husband. However, they soon discovered that Tiffany was last seen at the car wash at 6 p.m., and Ryan had a solid alibi, having been at work from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. A new lead emerged when the car wash owner contacted investigators, reporting that he saw a customer on the same day Tiffany disappeared. The customer was a man named William Reese, who had been featured in a news report a few months earlier for his involvement in an abduction in Texas. What's more noteworthy is that William has a personal relationship with Tiffany. His mother was good friends with Tiffany's mother, although he himself had never met Tiffany. After her death, he even called Tiffany's mother to offer his condolences. Despite this new information, police were still unable to gather enough evidence to prove William's involvement in Tiffany's murder, and the case remained unsolved for a long time. In 2015, thanks to advancements in DNA technology, investigators found new evidence in the Tiffany case. A DNA swab taken during Tiffany's autopsy in 1997 was sent to the lab for testing. The results matched a DNA profile in the CODIS database, which implicated William in Tiffany's murder. He was subsequently charged in Oklahoma City with the 1997 kidnapping and murder of Tiffany. Just as his trial was about to begin, William unexpectedly started confessing to other crimes in an attempt to reach a deal with the prosecution. Despite having eluded police for 19 years, he ultimately revealed the truth, having a history of aggravated kidnapping and other crimes. When shown photos of Laura Smither, Jessica, and Kelly Cox, he immediately accepted responsibility for their murders and disappearances, although denying any sexual motive behind his actions. William was questioned about his victims in Oklahoma. He agreed to cooperate with authorities by showing them the burial sites of 2 victims, Jessica and Kelly, on one condition: he would not face the death penalty. In April 2016, investigators followed him to a location in a Houston pasture where human remains were discovered. After several days of excavation, the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed that the remains belonged to Jessica. The search continued in Brazoria County, where another set of human remains was found. Dental records confirmed that these remains belonged to Kelly Cox. The trial for the murder of another victim, Tiffany, began in May 2021. William was found guilty by a jury on May 28, 2021, and received a death sentence on August 19, 2021, for her abduction and murder. After his murder conviction in Oklahoma, he was sent to Texas in March 2022 to face trial for the murders of Laura Smither, Kelly Cox, and Jessica. He pleaded guilty to all 3 charges and received a life imprisonment sentence in June 2022. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Nancy Lagerquist. Nancy Lagerquist, an 87-year-old woman, was a resident at the Riverside Healthcare Center, where she had lived since 1988. She was born in 1902 in Hamilton, Montana, and she spent much of her life working as an executive secretary. She was also an active member of the Missoula Business and Professional Women's Club before her retirement. She remained single for her entire life and did not have any children. When she passed away, she also did not have many relatives. On July 1, 1990, Nancy was seen sleeping in her bed by a care worker at 3:30 a.m. 1 hour later, at 4:30 a.m., the care worker checked on her room again but found her missing. This caused alarm and prompted 5 staff members on the shift to conduct a search. Despite their efforts, Nancy was nowhere to be found. At 4:41 a.m., the police were notified about her disappearance. It is worth noting that Nancy required around-the-clock assistance as she was unable to walk. Before her disappearance, she had been living an ordinary life at the care home, with nothing in her background suggesting she was at risk. Law enforcement and search and rescue teams arrived quickly at the scene. They searched the home and the surrounding area thoroughly. Since the home was located along the Clark Fork River, police officers in boats also searched the water. At 6:30 a.m., they stopped searching. Authorities found Nancy's body near the riverbank, about 30 minutes downstream from Riverside. She was the victim of a brutal murder involving sexual assault. Afterward, her body was thrown into the water. 2 investigators working on the case quickly realized the enormity of the challenge ahead. The discovery of Nancy's body in the water resulted in the destruction of any forensic evidence. Additionally, several key pieces of evidence, including Nancy's missing diaper and the possible murder weapon, were never found, leaving the police with unanswered questions. Detectives theorized that the perpetrator entered and exited Nancy's room through the window facing the river. To do this, they cut the window screen, but left no evidence on the window, windowsill, or anywhere else in the room. It is also puzzling that none of the home's alarm systems were triggered during the entry, and further checks revealed that all alarms were working properly at the time. A key witness reported seeing a man near the crime scene around 4 a.m. He walked through the parking lot of the Missoula Athletic Club, moving away from the river toward East Broadway Street. This individual was approximately 30 to 40 years old, 180 to 200 pounds, and had distinct physical features, including light brown collar-length hair, a mustache, and brown-rimmed glasses. He wore an untucked, striped white and brown t-shirt, which was longer at the back, along with tan shorts and white tennis shoes. The man was not considered a suspect in the case, but the police did want to question him. Nancy had very few relatives, so investigators quickly dismissed a family-related motive for the murder. They shifted their focus to the care home staff. Considering that a staff member would be familiar with the layout and security measures of the facility, leading them to suspect that the murder could be an inside job. This led authorities to concentrate on a particular male staff member. He was eventually cleared, but he left the care home less than a month later for unclear reasons. The police investigation shifted from focusing on a staff member to the possibility of an outside perpetrator. They observed that the home's security measures concentrated on the doors rather than the windows, leading them to speculate that the victim, Nancy, might have been targeted simply because her room faced the river, with no specific motive for the attack. During the investigation, a man named James Bailey was interviewed multiple times, but was eventually cleared as a suspect. Detectives have been reviewing witness statements to look for any other suspicious deaths at the nursing home. Their attention was drawn to the case of 86-year-old Bertha Scott, an Alzheimer's patient who passed away in her bed on May 2, 1990. At the time, her death was attributed to natural causes, as she had heart disease and was frequently restrained at night to prevent her from wandering. However, one nurse reported an unusual detail, a bruise on Bertha's neck, which they found suspicious. Bertha died and was buried without an autopsy being performed. Around the time of her death, staff members at her care home noticed some minor tampering with the windows in the physical therapy room. Based on a nurse's comments, the police decided to exhume Bertha's body to re-examine her cause of death. The police later revealed to her family that she had been raped, then she being strangled to death, leaving them in shock. Bertha's life is very different from Nancy's. Born in Pennsylvania in 1904, and Bertha married 20 years later. 2 years before her death, she moved to Missoula to be closer to her children. Although 4 of her 6 children had passed away before her, she left behind numerous grandchildren. During the medical examination of Bertha's body, semen was found, and the sample was collected. Unfortunately, the sample was too degraded to produce a DNA profile, therefore was unable to help the police identify her killer. Both cases eventually came to a dead end. In 1992, authorities investigated a suspect who was guilty of sexually assaulting a nursing home resident, but he had an alibi since he was in prison during the murders. The same year, Lloyd Chase Allen was also identified as a suspect, but he too was incarcerated at the time. In 2002, the Missoulian reported that several residents of the care home described a mysterious man who would walk the halls at night. There are concerns about the accuracy of the information provided by these residents, so it's difficult to determine whether this man actually existed. As a result, it is that additional unsolved cases exist. Without DNA evidence or further investigation, a resolution to this case seems unlikely. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Kay Sarah Stops Pretty Places. Kay Sarah Stops Pretty Places was born on August 14, 2001. She grew up in a large family and was a member of the Crow and North Cheyenne Native American reservations in Montana. As a teenager, she was an exceptional athlete, enjoying various sports including basketball, football, running, cross-country, and wrestling. She also had a passion for the arts, performing in plays and singing in her high school choir at Hardin High School. Kay Sarah is a kind and compassionate person, always caring and understanding to those she comes into contact with. In her free time, she often cared for stray animals. Her lifelong dream was to become a performer, aspiring to act and sing, with a bright future ahead of her. However, her life was tragically cut short shortly after she turned 18. Kay Sarah was last seen in the rural town of Hardin, near the Crow Reservation, on August 24, 2019. She lives with her grandmother, who is named Yolanda Frazier. People did not know where she went, but it was clear that she did not return home. Kay Sarah planned to meet her mother the following day for a trip to North Dakota but failed to appear. Her family began to worry when Kay Sarah no responding to texts, didn't answer calls, and was inactive on social media. This was unusual for her, raising concerns that something was amiss. Kay Sarah's aunt, Percilia Bulltail, went to the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office to report Kaysara Niece missing. However, the office told her that she would have to wait a while before filing a report. This information proved to be false. In Montana, because Kaysara was under 21 and considered a minor, police were required to conduct an immediate search. Despite this, it wasn't until August 27 that the missing persons report was finally allowed to be filed by Kaysara's family. Kaysara's family felt that the police did not take her disappearance seriously, they failing to conduct a search and failing to distribute flyers after she went missing. When she went missing, police initially told Percilia that Kaysara was probably just out with friends. Kaysara had previously struggled with alcohol issues, most notably when she was found unresponsive at school in 2019 due to intoxication and required emergency medical help. After her disappearance, her family waited anxiously for any information about her whereabouts. It wasn't until 5 days later, on August 29, that a jogger stumbled upon Kaysara's body near a wood pile in a backyard at the intersection of Mitchell Avenue and Rangeview Drive in the Hardin suburb, the same area where she was last seen alive. Notably, the homeowner, who had no connection to Kaysara, was away at the time of the discovery. Kaysara's family was not immediately notified that a body had been found, and instead, they learned about the information through social media rumors. As the news spread, they became extremely concerned. Percilia attempted to visit the scene to identify the body, but was denied access and she couldn't tell if it was Kaysara or not. Local news outlets were also not alerted to the discovery of the body. Kaysara's mother and Yolanda visited the local mortuary on September 1 to identify a body, but they were initially told it was not Kaysara's. As a result, the family continued their search for her. It wasn't until 10 days later that the body was confirmed to be Kaysara's. The coroner concluded that she died on August 26 and that her death was suspicious, requiring further investigation. However, due to the advanced decomposition of her remains, the exact cause of her death could not be determined. It was also not possible to rule out asphyxiation as a cause of death. Following Kaysara's body discovery, her family urged law enforcement to investigate her death. However, the family soon encountered resistance from Terry Bullis, the county coroner and owned the local funeral home Bullis Mortuary. Terry informed Kaysara's mother, Geraldine, on September 12 that her daughter's remains would have to be cremated in order for them to be returned to the family. This went against the family's cultural beliefs and also meant that no further examinations of the body would be possible. Moreover, the family had chosen the Dahl Funeral Home to handle the funeral arrangements, but Terry forced them to use his business, Bullis Mortuary Funeral Home. To the family's dismay, Kaysara was cremated before her other relatives could even arrive in Hardin. On September 14, the family located the site where Kaysara's body was discovered with the help of nearby relatives. A few days earlier, they had tried to visit the area, but were unable to, as the scene was no longer cordoned off and there were no boundaries to where the body was discovered. They met Jason Cummings, the neighbor who had found Kaysara's body. He told them that he had suggested to the police to charge her phone so they could contact the family. Unfortunately, it seemed the police had ignored his suggestion. Jason also questioned the authorities for not sealing off the crime scene, causing evidence to be destroyed. 5 days after Kaysara went missing, on September 19, her family contacted the media to raise awareness about the case. However, they were surprised to discover that local news outlets, including the Billings Gazette, were unaware of the situation. The Gazette said it called the sheriff's office daily for updates on the cases, but they were not notified about Kaysara's case. On the same day, Kaysara's mother, Geraldine, along with Kaysara's father, Alan, met with Captain Mike Fuss from the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office. They questioned Captain Fuss about why he had not contacted them or returned their calls. Captain Mike explained that he had been preoccupied with other cases. When asked why the crime scene had not been sealed off, Captain Mike stated that according to protocol, if investigators arrived at the scene before uniformed officers, sealing off the scene was not necessary. However, if officers arrived first, the scene would be sealed off. Geraldine and Alan also inquired about Kaysira's phone, asking why law enforcement had not charged it to examine her recent communications. Captain Mike seemed surprised that the family knew about this detail and explained that the battery was dead, so they did not attempt to use it. However, Kaysira's family countered that the authorities could have charged the phone to access for recent activity. They initially claimed that not even the FBI could gain access to the phone's contents. Captain Mike reported that Kaysira had apparently died from alcohol poisoning. However, her family's offer of a $5,000 reward for any information about her death. Mike's response was unexpected and surprising, revealing a clear expression of anger. Additionally, Mike revealed that the original investigator, Jeremy Middlestead, had resigned from the case, citing that he couldn't handle it. A number of new developments occurred during this time. Kaysira's family was interviewed by law enforcement for the first time, and they also met with the Bighorn County Attorney, Jay Harris. Jay disclosed that the coroner, Terry Bullis, had a potential conflict of interest due to his roles as the owner of a funeral home business and the county medical examiner. Jay noted that under Terry's leadership, many deaths had been rapidly attributed to exposure to alcohol and natural causes. However, when the family sought answers to their questions, Jay was short-tempered and provided little clarity. On the 23rd, Kaysira's family received notice that her missing person report had not been filed and that her name was not in the missing persons database. A week later, the FBI declined to take the case, stating they required more evidence that Kaysira was murdered on the reservation. Notably, shortly before Kaysira's disappearance, she recorded a video of her 15-year-old wheelchair-bound younger brother being beaten by several police officers and shared it on social media. The incident involved deputies from the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office, resulting in disciplinary actions against the officers involved. However, one of the policemen present at the scene where Kaysira's body was found was said to be a policeman involved in the beating. This has raised suspicions that the police involved in Kaysira's death chose not to investigate, possibly to retaliate against her for her attempts to hold them responsible for her actions. 2 years after Kaysira's death, new information surfaced in August 2021. 4 witnesses came forward with accounts of the incident that led to her death. Their statements are not entirely consistent, but they generally agree on what happened. The witnesses reported that an argument took place outside a house on Rangeview Drive around 3 a.m. on August 26, 2019. Kaysira was involved in the argument with 3 other individuals, a 17-year-old girl, a 19-year-old woman, and a 23-year-old man. It was claimed that Kaysira had been at the house earlier, and one of the occupants had bought her alcohol. At the time of her death, her blood alcohol level was 0.149. The argument prompted a nearby resident to set off their car alarm, hoping the noise would cause the group to leave. And the group dispersed in different directions. Kaysira was last seen heading towards the area where her body was later found. Additional information was also revealed in the new report. Forensic analysis found no foreign DNA under Kaysira's fingernails. Furthermore, it was discovered that Kaysira had been diagnosed with asthma shortly before her disappearance. The case remains unsolved, and the authorities are still seeking information. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sarai Sierra. Sarai Sierra was born on November 9, 1979, in New York City to Puerto Rican parents who immigrated to the United States in 1973. Her father, Dennis, and mother, Bethany Jimenez, settled in Manhattan, where they raised their children, including Sarai, her brother, David, and her sister, Christina. Soon after moving, the couple joined the local Protestant community. They raised all of their children strictly, following the religious teachings of their chosen faith. Sarai's family regularly attended church together, socialized with other members of the religious community, and the children attended Sunday school. Growing up, Sarai had a strong, energetic, and creative personality. Unlike her younger sister Christina, who was quiet, obedient, and very modest. Sarai's family had strict rules that all members had to follow. These rules, which were applied to the daily routines of the family members, such as the daughters were not allowed to socialize with boys, and they had to be home by 9 p.m. All their friendships were controlled, and the parents always knew where they were and with whom. Sarai's life revolved around her family, school, and church, and her sphere of contact was limited to those places. For a young, active, sociable girl like Sarai, she felt trapped by the boundaries set by her parents, even though they thought they were doing the best for her. During her school years, Sarai planned to go to a teacher training college and become a teacher in the field of culture or art. However, as she neared graduation, her interests changed and she became fascinated with psychology, considering a career change to a field related to this new passion. At a religious community meeting, a young man named Stephen noticed Sarai, a striking dark-haired beauty. He found an excuse to talk to her. At the time, Sarai was 18 years old, while Stephen was 7 years older than her. Despite the age difference, her parents found Stephen to be a decent, polite, and honest young man, so her parents agreed to let the couple date. Stephen quickly got along with Sarai's parents, Dennis and Bethany. Less than a year after meeting, in February 1999, the couple married. Sarai was 19 and Stephen was 26. It is possible that Sarai did not truly love him, but agreed to marry him for the purpose of moving out of her parents' home and freeing herself from such strict control. After the move, Stephen and Sarai settled in Michigan, where Stephen's parents lived. The change was especially important for Sarai, who had spent most of her life in New York. The new environment seemed to have a positive effect on her. She enjoyed decorating her new home, making new friends, and exploring the area. Sarai found work as a receptionist at a local dental office and was thinking about getting a college degree. Sarai soon became pregnant, giving birth to a boy and then a girl. As a result, her college plans were postponed. A few years later, the Sarai family of 4 decided to move again, this time to California, where they settled in the Silver Lake neighborhood of Los Angeles. Here, Stephen was offered a job, but the couple soon realized that the money he earned was not enough to live on. After consulting with each other, they decided to move back to New York. They found a small apartment to rent. At this time, the couple was having financial difficulties. Sarai remained at home to take care of the children, while her husband did many odd jobs to make a living. However, things began to stabilize when the children started going to school. Sarai got a job at an advertising agency. At the same time, Stephen found a stable job as a bus driver on one of the city's routes. Sarai put her studies on hold to raise her children. As her children grew older and her life became more stable at the age of 30, she returned to her long-cherished dream of pursuing an education. She decided to pursue a different field, choosing a degree in psychology at a local university. However, the boring classes began to bore Sarai. She decided to find herself in a different field, choosing a career that would inspire her and allow her to express herself. Since Sarai had always been creative, good at drawing and seeing beauty in everything, her artistic eye eventually led her to photography. To further hone her skills, she joined a prestigious photography community in New York. Her talent was quickly recognized as she demonstrated her ability to choose the perfect angle and create beautiful compositions. Her work was even praised by professionals for its creativity and vision. In early 2012, Sarai's colleagues advised her to create a social media page to showcase her work. She followed their advice and started posting her photos online. The response was overwhelming, with thousands of users subscribing to her profile and enthusiastically commenting on each new post. Within a few months, she became a real star, and her subscriber count continued to grow exponentially. The enthusiasm really overwhelmed Sarai. She felt that she could achieve much more and wanted to develop and improve in this direction. So she proposed to organize a group photography trip to look for beautiful and unusual locations in different parts of the world. She started by organizing short trips within the country, focusing on capturing iconic architectural landmarks and historical monuments through her lens. When her photos received significant attention and praise, she was motivated to continue. Next, Sarai wanted to travel to Istanbul, one of the most ancient and beautiful cities in the world, to document the city's historical sites. Sarai's decision to take a photography trip to the other side of the world surprised her family, especially her parents. Since she had never traveled abroad or been away from home for a long time, they were not very happy with the idea. However, Sarai was determined to carry out her plan and even arranged for her best friend, Magdalena, to come along. Her parents did not know that Sarai's family was going through a difficult time, as her relationship with her husband began to fall apart. It is possible that this difficult situation prompted Sarai's desire to take the trip. She wanted to change her surroundings and think about her family's difficulties. Sarai had lived in a strict framework for too long, and now she was eager to do what she wanted to do. At the same time, her husband Stephen's social media profile began posting cryptic statuses, reflecting on the value of marriage, love, and mutual respect in relationships. And there was a post where Stephen darkly hinted at Sarai's infidelity. But a few hours later, Stephen deleted the post, leaving unanswered questions behind. It was clear that he felt unhappy and unloved, and he tried to show it to everyone through his social media page. Sarai was also going through the same pain, but she kept it to herself, trying not to complain and focusing on her work. Sarai's long-awaited trip was coming up, but she received some disappointing news just before her departure. Her best friend Magdalena, who was supposed to accompany her, had to cancel the trip due to unforeseen work issues. Although Sarai was extremely upset, she had been looking forward to the trip for so long that she decided not to change her plans. Her family was worried about her traveling alone to a foreign country, but Sarai reassured them that everything would be fine. She promised to keep them updated by calling, writing, and sending photos every day. In addition, Sarai was also planning to visit Germany and Austria, where she had scheduled several commercial photography assignments. Her entire trip was literally scheduled by the hour, and she would not deviate from the plan. On January 7, 2013, Sarai traveled from New York to Istanbul. She had some cash with her, and she had carefully packed her belongings, which included a smartphone, a tablet, and a cheap DSLR camera with a professional lens. Upon arriving in Istanbul, she reported to her family that she had landed safely and was on her way to her pre-booked hotel, which was located in a less popular part of the city. Due to budget constraints, the hotel was located in a remote neighborhood that locals considered unsafe. After dropping off her luggage and changing into her travel clothes, she headed to the nearest metro station, eager to explore the historic city center. Sarai spent her days in Istanbul sightseeing and capturing the beauty of the city through photography. Every evening, she would video call her parents and husband, sharing stories about her experiences and plans for the next day. She also spent time processing the photos and sharing them on social media. Unknown to her family, Sarai met a young man named Taylan on social media in 2012. Over the course of several months, they corresponded and became very close. It was Taylan who convinced her to fly to Istanbul. As a native of Istanbul, Taylan was the ideal guide, showing Sarai around interesting places. Sarai trusted Taylan completely, and they spent many days together exploring the city. After a week in Istanbul, Seray traveled to several European countries, where she arranged several commercial photo shoots. Here, Seray saved money on hotel rooms, as she was welcomed by fans who had subscribed to her social media accounts and had been following her work for a long time, offered to let her stay. And her fan was a young man in Austria, who met her at the airport in Vienna. He was a few years older than Seray and shared her passion for photography, admired her work and wanted to meet her in person. Seray's trip went smoothly. She visited all the planned destinations and met everyone she had arranged to meet. On the third day, she arrived in Berlin, where she was greeted at the airport by fans who took her on a tour of the city. After completing her assignment in Germany, Seray returned to the airport and flew back to Istanbul, planning to stay there for 2 more days before returning home. Upon arriving in Istanbul, she met Taylan and they spent the day exploring the city together. They ended the evening at a popular local bar, and after midnight, Taylan took Seray back to her hotel, where they said their goodbyes. On January 21, 2013, Seray was scheduled to return home to New York after her photography trip. Before leaving, she informed her parents and husband of her flight details. Since this was the longest trip she had ever taken away from home, everyone was relieved that the trip was coming to an end. However, before returning, Seray decided to take a last walk around the city and take some more beautiful photos to show everyone. At the appointed time, Seray Deniz, father, arrived at the airport to pick up his daughter because her husband was at work and could not come. He arrived early to avoid any possible traffic jams. However, after the plane landed and all the passengers had disembarked, Seray disappeared without a trace. Worse still, her phone was unreachable and all attempts to contact her were unsuccessful. Deniz then waited a while longer, and worried about his daughter's absence, he went to see a representative of the airline. They told him that a passenger by that name was not on the flight, which shocked Deniz. He quickly called Steven and told him what was happening, emphasizing that she needed to be found immediately. Steven started contacting the hotel in Istanbul where his wife, Seray, was staying. The hotel staff informed him that although it was time to check out, her belongings were still in the room and she had not arrived to check out, and she did not appear at the hotel on the second day. This information sent family members into a panic, as they did not know where Seray was and did not understand what to do next. Steven accessed his wife's account, looking for clues about her disappearance. He discovered her correspondence with a man named Taylan, which aroused his suspicions. Despite this, Steven decided to contact Taylan directly to find out more. However, Taylan claimed that he had seen Seray the day before she left and that she had not even called him before the flight. Despite her promise, Seray's family quickly notified the U.S. Embassy in Istanbul about her disappearance. The next day, a large-scale search operation was launched in the area. Seray's husband and parents immediately flew to Istanbul to join the search effort. The police launched an investigation, starting with trying to identify the people Seray had met before she disappeared. To gather information, they interviewed the staff at the hotel where she was staying, as well as her friend Taylan. According to the hotel manager, he last saw Seray the evening before she disappeared, when she left the hotel with a small bag and a camera. Although she was scheduled to check out the next day, she never returned to the hotel. In addition, the receptionist provided a description of the clothes Seray was wearing on the day she disappeared. The situation with Taylan is much more interesting and ambiguous. First, the guy's name is actually Taran, and it is still unclear why he introduced himself to Seray with a fake name. And it is worth considering that they had been in regular contact for several months before meeting, and Seray had come to Istanbul at his invitation. All of this suggests that there was a romantic relationship, but Taran himself categorically denied it, claiming that they were just friends. The next stage of the investigation involved reconstructing Seray's route in detail. To achieve this, the police examined her mobile phone data and reviewed the footage of street surveillance cameras. They discovered that Sarai took the metro to Sultanahmet district and then to the Cape between the Bosphorus Strait and the Golden Horn Bay, followed by a trip to Eminona Bazaar. However, she got lost in the crowd of tourists at the bazaar. The police continued to track her route and discovered that she had boarded the metro again, intending to visit the Sarıyer Walls. Unfortunately, she disappeared from the camera's view again. Police decided to investigate the area around the Sarıyer Wall, questioning locals and searching the area in the hope of finding any witnesses who might have seen a woman holding a camera. After an extensive search, they found the body of a young woman near the ancient Constantinople wall. The body was hidden under a dirty, old blanket, making it less noticeable. Police believe the blanket was used to transport Sierra to the location. There was no clothing on the lower part of the body. An autopsy found that Sarai died from severe head trauma caused by a heavy, blunt object. Her body also showed signs of trauma, including hematoma and 2 broken ribs. There were also several hematomas on her body and several broken ribs. Pathologists also found epithelial granules and blood under Sarai's fingernails, indicating that she had defended herself and scratched at the attacker. An examination found that the attacker had taken her handbag, phone, and camera, but they left behind valuables such as her gold earrings, wedding ring, and expensive watch. A review of local camera footage showed a young woman resembling Sarai filming with her phone. A man then approached her, punched and pushed her, and both disappeared from view of the camera. Unfortunately, the identity of the attacker was not immediately known, leading to mixed reviews. The incident quickly gained international attention after details of the case were leaked to the media. There have been many questions and mixed reviews about Sarai's international travels. And police suspect that Sarai flew to Istanbul to visit an acquaintance, Taylan, whose real name is Taran, and then planned to meet another man in Austria. However, both men have denied having an intimate relationship with Sarai. The high-profile case was investigated jointly by Turkey's special services and the FBI, but initially, neither agency had any concrete leads to follow. A few weeks after the crime, police tracked down the suspect, Ziya Tasali, who had a criminal record and made a living by picking up scraps of paper on the city streets. However, before they could question him, Ziya borrowed money from relatives and fled the country, likely crossing into Syria through Hatay province. Police obtained a search warrant for his home and collected a DNA sample. They compared the DNA to skin particles and semen found on Sarai's body, confirming their suspicions that Ziya was indeed the perpetrator. Sarai's phone was last active in the neighborhood where he lived. Police initially gave up on arresting Ziya after learning that he had fled to Syria. However, an unexpected development changed everything. The suspect attempted to cross the border into Istanbul again, this time to return home, but was arrested for illegal entry. Before his arrest, he had joined a rebel group in Syria, acquired a gun, and was injured in the conflict. Fearing for his safety, he decided to return to Istanbul with the gun, leading to his arrest. Border police quickly alerted security services upon discovering his true identity. During questioning, Ziya Tasali gave a statement. On a hiking trail to the Sarıyer Wall, he noticed a young woman and watched her from a distance, admiring her as she took pictures. As he approached her, the woman, who appeared to be trying to communicate with him through gestures, seemed to try to ask him something, but Ziya did not understand because of the language barrier. However, he noticed that she had a brand new iPhone and an expensive camera, which caught his attention. As she continued walking, he followed her. It was getting dark and there was no one else around, near the location next to the wall. At one point, Ziya thought that Sarai was taking pictures of him, which angered him. He picked up a large rock and hit Sarai on the head. The two rolled down the rubble of the wall. After Sarai was knocked unconscious, Zia took advantage of the situation and sexually assaulted her. Zia then delivered another serious blow to the head to finish Sarai off. Zia took Sarai's belongings, including her bag, camera, and phone, and left the scene. As he was leaving, he came across a discarded blanket and decided to return to cover her body. He then dragged the body to a location out of sight of the hiking trail. He then covered the body with a blanket and left. Notably, while the search for Sarai was ongoing, Zia returned to the crime scene again to confirm that the victim, Sarai, was dead and that her body was still in the same position he had left it. When Zia found out on the news that the victim's body had been found, he knew the police would soon be looking for him, so he decided to flee the country. He borrowed money from his sister, who often felt sorry for him. The stolen items turned out to be worthless to Zia. The camera was broken during the fall and the smartphone was locked with a password that he could not crack. Therefore, he threw away the smartphone along with the other stolen items when he fled. Zia did not deny his guilt, and judging by his testimony, he had no remorse for what he had done, nor was he troubled by his conscience. Important evidence presented in court included forensic DNA analysis. This analysis showed that the skin found under Sarai's fingernails belonged to Zia and that his DNA was also found on her body. Additional evidence included data from Sarai's cell phone, which showed that it was last used near Zia's home. Additionally, a surveillance video recording of the attack added to the case file and supported the evidence against Zia. The presentation of all the evidence led to the decision that Zia should undergo a psychiatric evaluation. This decision was based on concerns about his sanity due to his unstable behavior and calm description of the violent crimes he had committed. The experts ultimately concluded that Zia was sane and fully aware of his actions at the time of the attack. In 2014, Judge Ely made the final decision in the case. Zia Tasali was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison. This decision was accepted by Sarai's family, who felt it was appropriate. After a thorough autopsy, Sarai's body was returned to New York for burial. Her funeral was held according to the family's wishes and in accordance with their religious beliefs. In her memory, Sarai's family created a website featuring her previously unpublished work, including photographs. The photographs attracted international attention, with people from all over the world wanting to buy them. The money raised from the sale of the photographs was set aside by the family for a charitable cause. Her husband, Stephen, began a close relationship with a woman in the Christian community who supported him during this difficult time and regularly helped him with childcare and household chores. Less than 2 weeks before the anniversary of his wife's death, Stephen married his new partner. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Buchanan family. Molly first met Adam Buchanan when she applied for a job as an office manager at his company. At the time, Adam was divorced and raising his son, Nolan, from a previous marriage on his own. The cheerful and outgoing Molly quickly caught Adam's attention. Their mutual interests led to a romance that blossomed into a serious relationship, and eventually, Molly moved in with Adam. Molly became pregnant and their baby was named Gavin. Those who knew the Buchanans described them as a loving family of 4. The patriarch of the family owned a construction company, and they purchased a vacation property in El Dorado County, California, a small cabin on 19 acres in Greenwood. The rustic cabin had no electricity, water, sewer, or gas. Adam, who worked in construction, became actively involved in renovating it, and the family began visiting regularly. On September 13, 2015, at 10 a.m., members of the Garden Valley Fire Department were called to a wildfire in Greenwood Township, located on Highway 193 between Cool and Georgetown. When they arrived, they found that the fire had burned 10 acres of land, and while the cabin was still smoldering, it was completely destroyed. Fire department personnel found charred remains in the ashes. The fire scene was still intact, and at 11 a.m., firefighters contacted the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office. At the time, no one understood the severity of the situation. Firefighters suspected that the victim of the wildfire was a pet trapped inside the house. When they arrived, the rest of the house was still smoldering, making it impossible to check inside. They had to wait for the fire to go out and the temperature to drop. While investigating the house, police officers detected an odor similar to that of burning flesh. Police later found a human skull and a charred torso, indicating that a tragedy had occurred. Police called for backup. Officers from the sheriff's office arrived to thoroughly investigate the scene. It became clear that the small, isolated cabin was not the owner's primary residence, but rather a vacation home. A Dodge pickup truck and trailer were discovered on a plot of land near the cabin. Police obtained the license plate number to identify the owner, who may have been affected by the wildfire. It was quickly determined that the truck and trailer belonged to Buchanan Construction, owned by Adam Buchanan. He lived approximately 160 miles away, in Bonita, California. Police were unsure whether the person inside was Adam Buchanan or someone else. The name of the company owner provided police with their first lead into the investigation. The Bonita police were tasked with checking on the welfare of all members of the Buchanan family. They arrived at the address and parked in the Buchanan driveway, where they saw a white Ford pickup truck. When the officers knocked on the door, Nolan, Adam's 16-year-old son from his first marriage, answered. He was surprised to see the officers in uniform and asked why they were there. In order to avoid alarming anyone in the house, the officers decided to first determine who was inside. Nolan explained that his father, Adam, had gone away for the weekend to their estate, 160 miles away, with Molly and their 8-year-old son, Gavin, and they were expected back that evening. According to Nolan, his father had left him in charge of the house. Police did not yet have enough evidence to confirm that the remains found in the cabin were those of the Buchanans, but the information they gathered, along with the discovery of what they believed to be 2 human remains on the evening of September 13th, was enough to report the family missing from the El Dorado County fire. The following day, September 14th, El Dorado County Police went to the Nolan home to conduct more in-depth interviews and identify the victims of the fire. At the home, officers spoke with Adam's parents, Howard and Susan Buchanan. They mentioned that their son, the owner of the burned-out cabin, had been coming to the cabin to do repairs himself. The parents were very concerned because they had not been able to contact their son or daughter-in-law until that time. From their statements, officers learned that the home was equipped with a generator, but that there was no electricity at the time of the incident. There were also gas tanks inside. This led to 2 possible explanations: the fire could have been accidental or intentional. By September 15th, the fire had cooled, allowing police to collect evidence, including debris from a nearby fire pit. Detective James Peterson of the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office reported finding new remains, which changed the direction of the investigation. Police discovered a skull fragment with a bullet hole. At that point, it was clear that a homicide had occurred, and according to the sheriff, it could no longer be considered an accidental fire. The remains were collected and sent for DNA testing. In the first set of remains, a bullet was found lodged in the victim's thigh. The bullet-riddled skull was identified as that of a child. There was now no doubt that the fire had been used to cover up the crime. Police initially focused on whether anyone in his profession might have had a grudge against him. They also looked into Molly's life to see if she had any enemies who might have committed the crime. When those leads proved fruitless, police began looking into Molly and Adam's marital problems, which uncovered more problems. Police discovered that Molly and Adam's relationship had deteriorated significantly over time and that at the time of the murders, they had been sleeping in separate rooms for some time. A diary belonging to Molly detailed instances of abuse by Adam. Witnesses reported that Adam had not only abused Molly, but also abused children. Molly's mother, Susie Slanker, expressed to police that she feared that the couple might seriously harm each other during their arguments. Although Molly did not end her relationship with Adam, she would occasionally leave with her son to stay at her parents' house, returning after a few days until the next argument. It was also revealed that the couple enjoyed hunting in the area near their vacation home. Since both were armed, the police hypothesized that during an argument, one of them picked up a gun and shot the other, then, realizing the seriousness of the situation, committed suicide. There was a notable contradiction. If the tragedy had been caused by a conflict between husband and wife, there should have been a weapon found near one of them. However, no weapon was found. The police thought that the weapon might have been destroyed in the fire, making identification more difficult. For 5 days, members of the forensic team meticulously sifted through the ashes of the house. Despite a thorough search, they did not find any weapons. At this point, the medical examiner confirmed that the DNA found on the bodies belonged to Adam Buchanan, Molly McAfee, and their 8-year-old son Gavin. All 3 victims had suffered gunshot wounds prior to the fire, and the angle of the shot made it unlikely that they had committed suicide. The absence of a gun suggested that a 4th person had been present in the home who had shot the Buchanans, prompting a complete reopening of the investigation. Police turned to the victim's 16-year-old son, Nolan. He told police that the family had driven away in an old Dodge truck. Nolan explained that his father had chosen to use the company truck instead of their personal Ford, which was parked in the driveway, because he had loaded it with rocks for landscaping near their country cabin. The truck was later found near the burned-out cabin. When asked why Nolan did not go on vacation with his relatives, he explained, as he had in his first interview, that he needed to take care of the house and garden while his father and stepmother were away. Nolan also mentioned that a neighbor was illegally planting trees on the edge of the Buchanan property, which led to frequent arguments between his father and the neighbor. His father would often demand that the neighbor stop planting trees and threaten to call the police. Nolan spoke about the difficulties of the family business, revealing that the company was facing serious financial problems. The company was downsizing, with only 5 employees remaining. According to his father, debts were mounting rapidly. The investigation identified a suspect, a neighbor. The main problem was that no one could identify which neighbors were involved. The police went door to door, interviewing homeowners in the area. This approach paid off when they found a man who confirmed that he had argued with Adam about growing an illegal crop. However, he claimed that the disagreement ended after a tense conversation and that he had an alibi. After confirming the neighbor's alibi, the police investigated the family's financial situation, as their business was struggling. On September 18th, police went to Adam's company to talk to the employees. Nolan's words were correct. The company was in dire straits, facing bankruptcy with debts exceeding $30,000. As a result, several employees were fired. Several of these former employees were very unhappy about being fired, making them potential suspects in the case. This aspect provided an important lead for the police. Over the weekend, the local high school held a community cleanup day. Students worked to clear debris from a park located about a mile from Adams Construction Company. During the cleanup on September 19th, they discovered a small wallet containing Molly McAfee and Adam Buchanan's wallets and identification cards, hidden under one of the bushes. There was also a .22 caliber rifle nearby. Police were dispatched to the scene immediately. The county sheriff's office has since developed a new theory. The suspect may have used the rifle to kill the Buchanans and, to conceal the crime, removed their identification from the scene. This finding is significant because it suggests that someone traveled from Bonita to Greenwood to kill the family and then returned to Bonita to dispose of the evidence and the weapon. This suspect is likely a Bonita resident. The location of the evidence near Buchanan Construction supports the idea that the boss was killed by a disgruntled employee. Police have sent the gun and bag of documents for analysis and are seeking a search warrant for the company's records and premises. During their search, police accessed a video surveillance camera located on the company's premises. Fortunately, the camera focused on the parking lot, not the company's premises. Surveillance footage showed the family had left town on Friday, so police reviewed footage from that day. They were surprised to see that Adam had hooked up a trailer full of rocks to a Ford F-150, not a Dodge truck as Nolan had claimed. Police discovered that Nolan had deliberately interfered with the investigation. If the white Ford had pulled the rock trailer to the cabin, then someone must have driven it back and parked it in the Buchanan family's driveway. Police decided to interview Nolan again. Nolan repeated his account of the weekend, where he had been, and who he had met, but this time they also asked him about the movie he had seen at the theater and how he had paid for his shopping at the mall. When asked how he paid for dessert on their date, Nolan said he used his father's credit card. Police then obtained a search warrant for Buchanan's Bonita home, inspected his vehicles and reviewed his financial records. They found a Ford parked in the driveway, which they carefully inspected. They noticed red dirt on the tires, which matched the dirt found in Greenwood. If the Ford had made the trip the previous weekend or earlier, some dirt might have remained. Unfortunately, the fire destroyed the tire tracks near the cabin, but the accumulation of dirt suggested the car may have been in Greenwood recently. Officers tracked the bank card transactions and discovered that Adam Buchanan used his credit card at Taco Bell on Friday, September 11th, while traveling to Greenwood. Nolan, on the other hand, claimed he was home, not with his parents, and had a credit card with him. Police went to the diner and reviewed security footage, confirming their suspicions. A white Ford was seen instead of a truck. When they searched the Ford, they found a Taco Bell receipt from September 11th showing 4 drinks purchased, not 3. Additionally, evidence at the scene of the fire showed the presence of 4 drink cups, confirming that Nolan had been in the car. The next credit card transaction occurred on Saturday, September 12th, at the Valencia Club bar in Pennon, about 30 minutes from the cabin. Adam's parents had alerted detectives to the bar, saying their son and daughter-in-law often went there after working on renovating the cabin. Security cameras recorded the moment the couple left the bar, and highway traffic cameras tracked their route. A Ford F-150 was seen heading toward the Buchanan cabin at 2:30 a.m. on the day of the fire, and then driving in the opposite direction at 3:30 a.m. In the first instance, cameras captured Adam and Molly in the car. In the second, only Nolan was recorded. Hours later, on the morning of Sunday, September 13th, Adam's credit card was used at 3 locations owned by Bonita, Starbucks, McDonald's, and a gas station. The bank confirmed to police that Buchanan had only 1 bank card. This information contradicted Nolan's accounts. At this time, forensic results showed that Nolan's fingerprints were found on the gun. He was arrested in the classroom. Nolan Buchanan pleaded not guilty to the charges against him and attempted to twist the story by claiming that his father had shot his family. He said his father had pointed a gun at him, and in self-defense he took the weapon away, accidentally shooting his father. Nolan maintained that it was self-defense, claiming that the fire and his subsequent lies were due to his panic and extreme fear. He explained that he had doused the house with gasoline and set it on fire to cover it up. The defense repeatedly pointed to Adam's abusive behavior toward his son and other family members to the jury. The medical examiner raised doubts about the verdict, noting that the gunshot wound to Gavin's skull indicated it was fired at a nearly 90 degrees angle. Nolan, meanwhile, claimed that he and his brother's beds were next to each other and that they were both awakened by noises and screams. At that point, Nolan allegedly saw someone enter the bedroom and shoot Gavin. The shooter then pointed the rifle at Nolan, who was able to push the attacker away. According to this account, the shot would have come from about a 45 degrees angle, which is inconsistent with forensic evidence. The prosecution believes Nolan shot his younger brother Gavin while they were home alone, as their parents were at a bar. After waiting for their father and stepmother to return, Nolan shot them as well. The position of the bodies suggested that Adam was killed first, followed by Molly. Nolan then took his rifle, his parents' papers, poured gasoline over the bodies, and set the house on fire. He then went home, met his girlfriend, and spent the day with her to establish his alibi. On July 13, 2018, a jury convicted Nolan Buchanan of 3 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 150 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years.